Today is Tuesday, October 5th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I am your co-host, Mike Shalau of Is Was Brewing. I'm here with my other co-host and Fade Master for the day.
Fade Master Chris. That's
Wow.
my new name. I think I'm keeping it.
You guys had no idea. That intro was flawless. It actually was pretty flawless. Like, we joke about that sometimes when it...
Flawless victory.
Yeah, flawless victory. Now, you got a lot to live up to. That was pretty incredible. Chris, how do you feel?
Good. What people won't realize is that they'll never hear this because I'm sure it's actually not recording or it's not recording into something.
Steven told us there was an SD card in there. Now this is on.
We never double checked. Yeah,
I never checked. So
This is an elaborate ruse to have this never actually go out.
geez, I hope that's not the case. It says it's recording. I don't think it would record into nothing, I would hope. I hope it would throw some sort of error, but it's good to be here. It's good. First time ever doing anything technical with the production of the show while it's happening. I've edited the show after the fact. I put it online and stuff like that, but we'll see. It's almost impossible considering how long I've been doing it that's the case. But I guess it's not. When I've gone on location without Surge, I've kind of done it before, but I've never worked this board.
Before I was like an actual regular guest, or I was an actual co-host, I was a guest host, and I think one time I had to do it. So I only guest host like 2 or 3 times, but for some reason I had to do it one time, and you did it like 289 times and never once had to.
It just shows my ability to pass off other things onto people.
Well, thanks, Logan.
Yeah. But cheers to Surge, who's probably at this point hanging 10 off pipeline.
He is 9 painkiller pina coladas deep.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be misconstrued. I don't think Surge's a pretty good boy, but he's on his honeymoon.
Very cool. Well, hope you're doing well, Surge.
We miss you.
Yeah, and we've got a fun show, a show that you wanted to put together. Mike, this was your idea, wasn't it? When we were coming up with all the ideas for shows, I thought this is one that you had. You definitely would have, because I wouldn't have thought of this.
We just get such a creative flow going. It's hard to tell. We're just kind of conduits for the ideas at that point.
Flowing.
So, so many great ideas.
Back and forth. But it was an idea to talk to beer buyers, right? Was that the idea?
Yeah. I don't think we've actually had, I mean, you're obviously on the show every day, but I don't think we've ever really had a discussion.
Well, I'm not the beer buyer at the store, right? Which
Yeah,
I mention. I don't think I explicitly say it, but I do mention it.
Just a pretty face.
Just a pretty face.
Yeah.
But anyway, we searched high and low. We put out a huge casting call for beer buyers, and we found
the top 2 best.
We found the top 2 best
that came.
Yeah. So we'll be introducing them
probably an hour or so
in a moment. But we just get to the intros, right?
Sure.
Well, actually, no. I should do my intro for the show, right? So this is the Beer Temple Podcast. We've introduced who we are, but I also want to thank, in addition to Fade Master Surge, Lumpen Radio for having us on, and the fearless leaders over there at Lumpen. We are coming to you once again from Studio BT, looking very spiffy.
It is
today.
spruced up in here.
And especially since last week where I was joking about how us having a show in the middle of what most people would consider to be piles of garbage.
It was pre-garbage. It wasn't garbage yet. But very clearly now, today, it was definitely garbage because it's all gone.
It's all gone. It's all gone. So it's much cleaner now.
Except for 7 cases of Rothhouse Oktoberfest is still in here.
Yes, but that is...
Those are pre-sold.
Those are sold, baby. Those are all sold.
That's profit.
Come in and grab your Rothhouse, guys.
Yep. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we were pretty lenient with you if you ordered it 6 months in advance. We
How
gave
could you
a
not
little bit
remember?
of time. Yeah. So thanks, guys, everyone out there who is listening via Lumpin' Radio or via whatever podcast app you guys listen on. So thank you so much, and apologies in advance for the less than perfect technicality of this show.
I do not apologize for that at all. It's been perfect so far.
Okay, well, I'm in advance. I'm apologizing. So we've got 2 guests, and as always, we will introduce our guests in order of seniority. Seniority being how many times you've been on the show, and in this case, raise your hand. Raise how many fingers you guys have been on the show. Yes. Okay, it's easy. All right. So the senior guest is cast a very wide net again. Yeah. Blah blah blah.
Geographically,
and it just came down to the general manager here at the Beer Temple and the beer buyer for the bar, Mr. Stephen Freshnock. What's up, dude? Welcome back.
What's up? I'm glad to be back.
What's up with you? I mean, for those listening, I know what's up with you because I see you every day.
Oh, I don't know, man.
Play along.
It's.
You look great.
Thank you, man.
You got a very cool like stash and goatee going.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a winter beard going before it gets cold. It's not my strong suit, so it's kind of like Amishy right now. But I feel like in a month it might be working itself out.
I think it's very promising.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
And the junior member of the cast for his third appearance on the show is Mr. Max Peltier of the Beer Temple, beer buyer
net.
For the store. Hey, it's not my fault that these are the 2 best.
Yeah.
Actually, it is my fault.
Yeah.
Partially.
Oh,
I think it's their partially.
glad to be here. I'm being paid for this, right?
Exactly.
How about
We're
that?
on the clock. Yes.
You guys are getting paid?
So as you guys can probably guess, we're going to be talking about beer buying. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that you thought you'd have some interest in and that we should discuss and kind of the people who are in the trenches, I think how we were describing it, right?
Yeah, I think it's an angle we've never come at before. We've never talked to anyone who's on the purchasing side about what it's like to do that day in, day out. And I think it would be some good insight for people that work at breweries and people that buy for other stores, for people that buy at such a highly esteemed and well-run, curated store and tap room.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment, but I think we should do some of our normal. Let's do some of our normal insiders roundtable stuff, some of our normal guest stuff. So, beers that people have had that have been exciting to them, or beers that they're looking forward to having. Anything? Anyone want to go? Anything they've had lately? I can certainly go
Yeah, I
first.
think you should go first.
Okay.
You got one.
Well, last night it struck me. I was I play on a darts league, and I was done playing. Pretty much had defecated in the bed, as they say, and I wasn't going to play anymore. And I was like, all right, well, I can have some beers now. I don't have anything to stay sober for. And I was like, all right, what do I want? And I noticed, at first I was like, oh, I want to try that Lafroig Cardig. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it was a really cool once-a-year release from Lafroig, cask strength, I believe, in Pedro Jimenez casks. Just a really cool scotch, right? And then I saw that there was Valdu was on as well, and I was like, oh, man, I'm like really excited about that. So I was like, well, all right, give me a pour of that as well. So I had a scotch and a beer. I guess I needed a bourbon, but I didn't do that. But then I was like, all right, cool. And I was walking back into the back room with both of them in my hands, and I realized, like, whoa, I've been to both of these places and had both of these exact spirits at both of these places. One in an island in Scotland, and one in the middle of nowhere in an abbey in Belgium, and I was very appreciative of that. I thought that was really cool that I had to, like, at the time, I mean, I probably discovered those, or they made their way into this. I'm sure that I had some part, definitely in the Lefroy, but probably also the Valdu, those two particular in them coming here. But I didn't order them that way. I ordered them because I was excited to try them, and then felt very fortunate that I had been to both places, and I don't think there's a lot of people who don't have that ability, who wish they probably could. So I felt very fortunate and very happy, and I enjoyed both of them, and I probably need to sit and appreciate some of the cool stuff about the job more often. So I did that yesterday, and it helped take the edge off of throwing darts like shit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Enjoying more parts of the job and having fun is something I've been talking to Kevin at Beguile about a lot recently. It's been so hard for the last couple of years. And it's like, we should have fun again. Let's do that.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm glad you got to have that experience.
Yeah, and it came very, very organically. And I kind of like, it's always the most fun when you, or the most meaningful when you don't expect it and it just kind of dawns on you.
Right. And especially when you get really into something like beer or scotch like that, part of your enjoyment of it is analyzing it sometimes. And when you can do that too much, and you can be like have too high of expectations for something because you've been there, or whatever the reason is. So just to have them and then enjoy them and have a nice time, even though you defecated in the bed.
In the bed, the sheets. Mm-hmm.
Is kind of what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Anyone else have anything that they're excited to try or that they've had recently that they've liked?
This past week, typically on Saturdays, me and Sam, one of the bottle shop guys, decide to pick out a bottle and enjoy one and split one together. Something that we see on the shelf that we're interested or we haven't tried. And this past week, I had a Del Ducato Bassiema Lipsia, which is a table beer, and it was just an incredibly well executed, easy drinking, and this is right up your alley. I recommend it. Like, just probably, it was just a joy to drink. Like, every once in a while, you have a beer and it's like easy to drink. It's stimulating. It has all the flavor that you wanted. Everything's dialed in perfectly, and that's how I felt about that beer. If you can come to the beer table and get it, obviously, but if you see it on the shelf, snag a bottle. Then this past week, Phase 3. I mean, as a beer buyer, and this kind of plays into the episode, it's hard to find really easy drinking and well executed sessionable, not even sessionable, drinkable dark ales like porters, stouts. They're sweet, they're big, they're loaded with adjuncts, and you're just finding one that's well executed. They did a coconut porter called, is it NIU Max?
NIU. Yeah.
NIU. I thought of it as like the Northern Illinois, Illinois University.
The
Salukis.
I was just looking at the tap list, and I was looking at it, and I saw there was a Phase 3 beer with coconut, and I just assumed it was going to be like 15% alcohol, so I didn't even look at the ABV, but you're saying it's
6.5% alcohol, and it's like really a well executed integration of the coconut. Like, it's drinkable, and it's everything you want.
Nice.
I got two. Both of them are, one's, we'll go with one. The last week I decided to open up side by side. We had La Predator, Apex Predator, and Aqua Predator next to each other.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I was going into it full on. Like, I've had Apex Predator 1,000 times before. Notably, I haven't had it. I legitimately probably have not had it in like 2 years or so.
It's a great beer.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to like La Predator more, Aqua Predator, but I came out of like Apex Predator just absolutely destroys them in my mind. Yeah. It's so good.
And it's so like,
very, very good.
It's exactly what you want out of it. And I feel kind of bad because, like, for the longest time, I've been kind of like annoyed that no one else outside of Off Color really does a year-round Saison outside of like a couple like really small ones here and there. And I mean,
I feel like
it is really good.
I feel like that batch of Apex Predator was like really well done. Like, it was like the most exciting Apex Predator I've ever drank. It was just really it was on point.
So that was really cool.
It's nice to revisit and rediscover, I guess, maybe.
I mean, I was pushing that. I love that beer. I drank so much of that probably, 6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Please drink with the right pipe.
Steven dies on air.
Another one that I had today, which is a style that nobody likes, and it kind of became a little bit popular briefly last year, but Hopewell put out a black IPA again, run it back. And honestly, it kind of does exactly what you want out of that style. And it just has that like, orange citrus note, good amount of roastiness, good bitterness. And there's nothing else like it out there. I mean, nobody else doing a black IPA. Nobody cares about it. It's nice. It's refreshing.
Cool.
Just
A
a nice
refreshing black IPA.
Well,
No,
it's-
I know what you mean,
it's-
and I totally agree.
yeah.
It was a good beer. It was a good beer. I really enjoyed it.
I also guess I have two. I don't drink a lot of high ABV
I have a third,
beers,
too.
But we're just gonna go around the horn
Yeah,
again.
just keep going.
2 hours of this. Let's go.
The first one is a beer that my friend Noah made. He made an oat wine he aged in some 18th Street rye barrels, the one I drank, that he then canned and gave to me a long time ago, and it was just sitting in the fridge, and I meant to get to him, and I just didn't. It was summer, and I didn't really want to drink
Right.
a barrel-aged stout. But it was delicious. It did all the things you wanted it to do. It was a really wonderful, well-made beer that he made in his garage, and it's a trope of working at breweries that people give you their home brew, and you're just like, I don't really want this. But Noah's a whole different
Yeah,
beast
yeah.
where it's
He's
like,
a very skilled.
yeah, he's a much better. He's like actually, I mean, I brewed the test batches of what became Wilby in his garage with him. So
Well, what's the show that was
easy.
easy on? Was that
in-
Netflix or
yeah,
whatever?
he's in it, and they use his garage.
For
for
the home brewing illegal brewery thing. That's
Yeah.
his home brew, and he's in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't play. He's essentially
I forget
Noah,
what
but
his
his
name
name
is,
isn't
but he
Noah.
plays Noah,
If you
yeah.
see a guy who looks like a Noah, that's Noah.
Yeah.
In Easy.
But yeah, that beer was wonderful. I still haven't even told him that, so he'll hear it on the podcast, I'm sure. And then the other one is Poet's Walk, which is a Suarez glass-aged barley wine,
Of course.
which is like a thing you look and you're like, what the?
Hey, and there's a lot of people who, Old Latrobe, you're talking Rolling Rock.
Is that like a
glass line
concrete
tanks
egg?
of Old Latrobe, at least according to the back of the bottle?
Well, I think their thing was they brewed it in like 2017, lagered it for a while, then bottled it, but didn't release it until like late 2020 or something like that. So they like cellared it for you. It was really cool. I was drinking it with my friend Gabe, and Gabe loves Suarez, but was like, I hate this beer. And then by the end of it, he's like, I love this beer because it's like a weird. It's not super sweet. It's not barrel aged. It's like weirdly kind of tart. There's like roasty notes. There's like prune juice. There's a lot going on in it. And if you go into it thinking it's going to be like a barley wine, like barley wines are now, you'll be like, this is a very weird beer. But if you just drink it for like the pleasure of unique and well-crafted flavors, it
Yeah.
was one of the coolest things I've had in a very long time.
I also want to. That's an awesome story, by the way. I love beers that. Some of my favorite beers I've ever had, I wasn't sure about when I first started drinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is cool.
I also didn't do the beer that much justice because we were just hanging out at Iswas, and I had one sitting like warm, and we just popped it open and drank it warm.
That's fine.
At like 70 degrees, and I'm like, if any beer can handle that, it's going to be
A barley wine.
a Suarez barley wine.
Sure.
So I have one other that's actually in the fridge. It's been in the fridge for a little bit, but that's at my house. So.
The other one that I was going to add was mostly because I think I get a reputation for adamantly hating certain types of beers. Sometimes fair, sometimes not. I am not
I know this
overall
one
a pastry stout fan. But it was one of you too, I believe. Was it you, Max, or you, Stephen?
I think
who
Steven made you try it.
just handed it to me. Didn't
Oh,
say
yeah.
what it was, and it was a Toppling Goliath stout, which had what in it? It was barrel aged coconut.
So it's Turmoil Monster Cookie. So it's modeled after a monster cookie, which is peanut butter, coconut,
chocolate.
frosting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sprinkles.
Sure.
Monster cookies are a thing. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that, but it was very good.
I have customers
very good.
tell me that they think it has like notes of like fortified wine.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty cool. They're getting that out of a stout.
I mean, it was balanced.
Yeah.
It was all the components were well integrated. There wasn't something that was just absolutely dominating it. And as you add adjuncts and add elements to a beer, that becomes more and more difficult to do. I've found when drinking them. I don't know,
Yeah.
about making them, but
Time only moves in one direction, right? So you can't like balance those. If you put too much of one thing, and you can't just be like, oh, we'll put a little bit more in, and it's not like cooking really where you can just keep throwing stuff in and see what happens, and like you end up with a mess or an infected beer. Yeah, it's not easy to balance all those things.
Yeah, that was a beer that actually did surprise me as well. I mean, I am very much not in the pastry camp, and just having some of the beers from Topping Goliath in the past and all of that, I did not anticipate it to be actually balanced, to be honest. And I've had customers go two directions with it, where some of them have been just like blown away by it, and other ones who are like, you put that on a board, barrel aged, 14%, all those adjuncts, they would just be drinking 4 of them. They're like, this doesn't have enough barrel. This doesn't have enough coconut. It's like,
It has plenty of barrel. It has enough coconut.
You gave me some of that after the show last week.
Yeah,
honestly, what it tasted like to me was barrels that didn't quite make the cut for some of their like more esteemed blends of stuff that they found a way to like turn into something that was desirable. Like I think that fortified wine note is like an oxidation character that is a very pleasant oxidation character in there. It works really well for the overall beer. But having had some of those, like I haven't had like the real whales of their portfolio.
That's the notes that I get in aged versions of those beers, not fresh versions. So that's
I thought
interesting.
that was an aged version.
No.
Oh wow.
only
That's
a
just
few
funny.
months
That's
old.
what it came across as, was that something I was
Right.
Kind of just these are good, but there's not assassin or whatever.
Yeah, so that was really cool. From a beer buyer's perspective, to give a little preview into it, did you have any question along the way about bringing that keg in? Because it was an insanely expensive keg.
There are like times when bringing in an insanely expensive keg, you know that you can still sell it. I mean, we also brought in past beers from them where we pre-sold the keg online, and that's one way of doing it. But I was pretty confident that this would sell through. I don't really see that with domestic kegs that much. This is kind of an outlier, but I see that with like Belgian imports all the time, where we charge that much for a pour, and people, don't blink.
Right. Well, there's some stuff where like the price of evaluation for how crazy the thing you're getting is not the same for other beers. Like
Well, this
you guys have some
also
of those
has
Tilkins or things
the
like that.
appeal of I got to try this once, and we give them the option to have like the sample or the pour.
Yeah.
We've got a letter.
Are we doing letters now, or do we want to talk a little bit about buying beer?
I thought we were gonna. Do you want to get right into buying beer? I wanted to do the letters. Well, we'll do the letter at the end.
Do the letter at the end? I thought it was maybe a come back from break thing, spur some conversation.
I think as the co-host, you're in tune to what should be happening. So I think that's probably what we should do. I think we should take a break, take a breather, collect ourselves, and then come back with more of the Beer Temple podcast. See you soon. Welcome back to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm here with my co-host Mike Shalau. We've got Stephen and Max from the Beer Temple store and bar, and we're going to start talking about what it's like to be a day in, day out beer buyer in Chicago for a place like the Beer Temple. And you guys were talking, well, we took a brief break about like kind of who the audience is, just so those of you out know who we're kind of speaking to. We're talking to some industry folks, but also I also want to add to people who are really interested in craft beer, but like the workings of craft beer and how places like this work, not necessarily the hunt and flipping beer to get bourbon and stuff like that.
In bourbon.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, you want to take it from there?
Sure. So I was just thinking that a lot of the people that listen to the show are people that shop at places like this, so it'd be interesting for them, or people that sell beer to places like this. So on both ends of that spectrum, it'd be interesting about how you guys go about what you do and how you make your decisions, and how it's changed over the years and how it's changed in your different roles. So Stephen, you've been here quite a while, right? You were at the old spot. You both worked at the old location too.
Yeah.
I think the timelines kind of run together.
We were just talking about this before the show. 8 years?
What? Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Maybe 7. A long time.
Long time.
So, and you were that was pre-tap room. So you were
Absolutely.
buying all the packaged beer.
I mean, I don't even think I was buying when I first went there. I think I was just like a registered jockey.
Sure, and but then you did buy it.
Transition
before
to
you
the role,
bought it,
absolutely. I
and
bought
now-
at the old location.
And now you GM and buy for the on-premise tap
Absolutely.
room. And Max, you've been here probably
Almost
a
as
long
long.
time, right? Like 6
No,
years.
I've been here for about 5 and change. I want to say something like that.
That's a good.
It's like
amount
what?
of
It was
time.
like 4 years we've been open at this bar, and I was here for about a year prior to that.
Like you're
Yeah,
here
sounds
longer
about
than
right.
that, but yeah, okay.
Something like that. Like
I remember when you
5
were
and a
the,
half.
the buyer at Local Foods. We
Yeah,
did
and
a-
I was
did a
buyer
dinner
before that.
together.
Yeah.
And you currently buy for the shop.
I currently buy for pretty much
Everything that isn't the bar.
Everything, right,
There's
right,
other
right,
stuff
right,
other
all
than that.
packaged,
Yeah.
packaged. So you guys also do a robust online and
Events and
Corporate.
and beer of the month and all sorts of crazy shenanigans that gets thrown onto Max.
Anything that's not a keg.
right.
I'll do
Anything
it.
that's not a keg.
So-
If it comes in a bag, I'll do it. Sure, why not?
So both of
Keg
you,
or gin shine.
Yeah.
so you guys have quite a vast experience in buying from different situations. So
Absolutely.
I guess sorry, Stephen. What's the biggest transition you've had to make going from buying for off-premise consumption, thinking about buying and curating for that, to on-premise?
Sure.
What's that transition?
I
been
mean,
like?
your mindset changes. You're now buying for a much smaller set. So, I mean, we have 20 taps and a limited amount of cooler space for package on site. Mind you, we have a cellar full of great beers, but I mean, you're really on the day-to-day, you're buying for a very small set that some of it is rapidly rotating, some of it is not. You know, you think about your pull-through, you think about what is popular, but also how you're going to represent and respect the world of beer and how you're going to educate people about beer. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's on a micro scale, I guess.
Sure. Is there like a different, like, I don't know, organization of your values when you're buying for the two different things, or are you still valuing the same things? And like, just generally the philosophy, right? 'Cause
Yeah, I
you,
think it's
you
a
need to
bit
have something for
different.
everyone when you're in the store, but
Sure. I mean, you also have, a lot more flexibility at the store level. You're buying things that are there that people rely on to be there. Like, let's use Hatachino Nest, for example. If we didn't have Hatachino Nest, I mean, there would be a guy with a pitchfork at our door. But, I mean, at the bar, you have that option to play around a little bit. You can have reliable things like Alpha King or, March Jungle Boogie on, but you can also have, a OEC beer that's a blend of Hanson's Lambic with sake and a sour ale, like crazy stuff that people never heard of. And you get that opportunity to educate. And I think that's what's really exciting about buying for the bar side is that you do have that option. You can turn people on to cool and interesting things that they never heard of before. And that's kind of, I'm not saying that's rare on the off-prem side, but it's kind of like a been there, done that thing over there, where there's still some opportunity to get people a bit more generally excited about things.
yeah. And I guess this one's kind of more like a question for both of you, and to talk in the same realm about it. But on the off-premise side, how have you seen your roles evolve? Obviously, when you were doing it before, into Max doing it, and just generally the beer scene in that way. Like, I guess I don't want to make it too pointed a question to get like a yes no answer, but it's like, generally what I'm thinking about is how has your role shifted from specific curation of your palates to curation for what the beer scene has evolved into? Because this is still a curated store. You have lots and lots of SKUs, but this isn't a place where you just bring everything in and send that people. It's just sell volume. So how have you seen the role of the buyer evolve over from when you were doing it, Stephen, to when you passed the torch to Max, and Max when you started it?
And also, let me say, the torch was never technically passed because the Beer Temple at the old place did it for a small shop. I bet you were one of the only places who bought the way we did, which was Stephen bought from some vendors,
True.
Max bought from others, and then there was a third guy, Nick Conti, who bought from another vendor.
Sure.
So we had 3 buyers for that one little store.
And we still do
Sure.
that
And
way.
I thought it worked. It worked. You guys synergized very well, I thought. I mean, maybe behind the scenes it was terrible, but it seemed to work very well.
No, I think that did work because you kind of, we all communicated well, but also you could check somebody and be like, and say, hey, I don't know if that's the best idea, and it was a respect thing,
So I just want to say, in terms of passing torch, it wasn't really like that. It wasn't like, now he does it
Sure.
differently.
But maybe I didn't articulate that in the right way. But the question is more just how have you seen the role of the curator and beer buyer in a specialty beer store evolve from the time that, Stephen, you started doing it to when you all were curating together to now where it's more Max, specifically in the off-premise, like bottle shop?
If you're talking purely from the store point of view, I think that when Beer Temple started up, there was much less focus from a lot of other beer stores in trying to do the same thing. I think that Beer Temple was very much unique in that perspective, really pushing for freshness, really trying to dig deep for a lot of these catalogs that you might not have any other store care about. And so it was very unique in that perspective. And as time has gone on and craft beer has evolved, more people have gotten into it. There's more stores that are doing it and stuff like that. And so you kind of have to change and balance out your audience because you can't expect to attract someone from Gary, Indiana, to drive up here just because we're the best craft beer store. Like there's so many other craft beer stores in the city. So you kind of have to work on both the audience of the individuals that are driving from anywhere from the suburbs to visiting from out of state to do a lot more focus on like your neighborhood, see what their actual palate is and see how that kind of works. So I think that in the past, since I started, in the past like 4 years, I think that I've put much more effort into what do people in our neighborhood who are going to be more of our bar regulars also want to drink in terms of in the bottle shop. And so like when you think of 5 years ago, if you asked us if we seltzers weren't a thing, but we have a stack of White Claw 12 packs in the bottle shop, like all the time.
Mm-hmm. And some people think that that's like us, like bowing to some kind of pressure. Or I've had people come up to me and been like, "Oh my God, really? Whoa! So you did it, huh? You did it. You got the White Claw." And I think people have that like odd wrong expectation about what we are.
We have a couple here. They're one of our best customers at the bar. They're great people. They drink craft beer all the time, but they bring home a 12-pack of White Claw like once a week or once every 2 weeks, and they're just as and if that's what they want to drink, I'm not going to judge them for that. Although, I mean, we're not going to like have your 30 different macro beers. We're going to try to trim it down to be like, you want to drink this. We're going to have a bit like tighter selection of that, but we need to have some level of like give and take with that. And I think it's way more valuable as we are a bar to work with a neighborhood than it was before, I think, where it was more of we could purely work on our own lane and hope that everyone was following us then.
I think back then, too, agree. Like we only had 24 packs of PBR. Yeah. That was our macro beer that we had. Right. But also, like back then, there, like Max said, there weren't other shops that were doing it quite like we were. We were a destination for a lot of people. They would come to us. But at that time, too, the access that we had, not many other people had that access or had yet figured that out. And now they have. Like, everyone has that access. Everyone sells beer to anyone. Yeah. So it's to differentiate ourselves in unique ways is really where, I think Max does a great job of that.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think, especially over the past year, that's kind of come to a culmination is before anything that was cool or we might think people might want to buy, we could buy. There was, with the variety that was available, we could fit everything on the shelves that we wanted to fit on the shelves. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, though, the past couple of years, there's been so many new breweries that have come to market, and we're being inundated nonstop with like spot drops and all these things and whatnot, that it's way more about, all right, cool, this week we have Outer Range, WeldWorks, and Other Half all coming in on the same week. What of these 25 SKUs do I want to bring in the store?
Right.
And so there's a lot of just like, I got to leave stuff on the cutting room floor.
If that were to happen 5 years ago, we would have brought in 50 cases of each SKU, and they would have sold out in a day, and it would have been gone. But now you have to cut some things.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I know I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit here, but it's like, you have that. You have like the idea of like people going to bottle shops for hype releases. Like KBS, for example, is one that people would chase store to store 5 years ago.
Yep.
And now it's a year-round available beer that nobody buys.
Literally follow trucks. That was the first beer I remember where you'd hear about truck chasers. That was the first time
I remember
I
CBS
literally
specifically being one.
I remember it for KBS before CBS was even out.
Yeah.
Because we would see all of them essentially, and that was the first one where there were people who were literally like in the middle of the day on like let's just say a Tuesday in a bottle shop at like 1 p.m. It's usually pretty dead. All of a sudden, a guy comes in, walking around, shopping. Another guy comes in, just looking around, shopping. Another guy comes in. Another guy comes in. And another guy comes in. And they're all, I'm like, what the F's going on here? And then the truck comes in. And I was like, you mothers. It's like, you guys suck. You suck.
Crazy.
And then they all left. They got their one bottle allotment. Or how much can I get a 4-pack? No. Now, obviously not. So, but anyway, it's crazy how that has changed. And I do want to say that I've noticed more on the bar side, but I think also Max just made a good point about it for the bottle shop side is I've seen you guys almost use customers as like avatars for types of pallets where you say, oh, we need a Jerry beer, RIP to a legend.
Yes.
But it's, that's how you talk. We need a beer for this type of person, for these people. They want to come here, and you don't mean, you do mean those people literally, but you also mean that type of patron or customer who comes here.
I mean, when you have someone coming in and spending money at your business every day, of course you want to accommodate them. And we're not talking about a specific person, but there is like an archetype of that person. And absolutely, you're going to buy for that person because they're the one that's driving the revenue.
Yeah, it's interesting. But we definitely, I've heard you say we need a beer for this type of person.
Roughly, this obviously is not. I didn't know about this, but roughly how many archetypes do you think you guys work off of like that? Like, is this?
I mean, I think of it, probably just like a dozen. I would say like a dozen would be the most I would be thinking of.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That
but
is
I
a
mean,
lot.
but the thing is, what you got to kind of think about is like, just to put in perspective. I'll just say first names here. We got like a Dave person who's like a big on stouts, wants like particular ones. He wants to try everything, but he doesn't want to have too much of it. You got Jerry, who was Sierra Nevada or Across the Gold from Revolution. You have
And came in after work,
I know who Jerry
and he'd
is.
have a couple, and then he'd go home.
If Jerry's the person I think he is, he used to buy beer when I was for me when I was working at West Lakeview Liquors.
Oh,
What? I doubt it. No.
Different guy.
Okay.
Different guy.
Definitely different guy.
Yeah, but you have like your individuals because you have your ones that want. There's a certain specific type of person who wants New England style IPAs, but hates lactose. Then you have the ones that are looking to go deep into like milkshake IPAs, stuff like that. And not to say that a lot of these palettes kind of go down the exact same road, but you can kind of base where those palettes are going based off of how certain customers are like gravitating towards.
I mean, we've definitely seen like a swing back to traditional classic styles. And I've seen those same people who 3 years ago were smashing hazies are now, that's all they want to drink is Oktoberfest and brown ale and Pilsner.
That's awesome.
That is awesome, but
One of the archetypes that like I would go say like goes back to classic style. Or
Wait,
more
wait,
like,
let me guess.
I'd call that archetype the burnout. But
Let me guess. Is
Burnout.
what you're about to say is, do you have an archetype for a juggalo who likes to do chug videos in the bar?
yes.
Oh, okay, good. That's
So
one
you
of
guys
the.
have-
That's
you
one
guys
of the-
have
I think that
Fago?
archetype is here right now while we're recording. By the way.
Hey, he's
Why
been a-
are we
he's
in
been a-
here?
he's
Let's
been a-
hit pause.
That is like
he has been a
the-
customer for years.
Oh, from the beginning.
Solid.
Is he legit a juggalo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We call him Juggalo Matt.
Yeah.
I'm sure he listens to this podcast too. So.
What? Sorry, guys,
What up,
but
Matt?
we're going to cut this
What's up,
short.
Matt?
We're doing an interview with Juggalo Matt.
I'm not sure. He honestly like that guy's been like deep into hype beer for a while. Like
Yeah, he's got a knowledge base that would
would
Oh,
probably surprise
yes.
us.
on
Yeah.
the surface you would
100%.
not be you would be surprised.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But anyway, I
But
interrupted
like one of the
you, Matt.
archetypes I go with is a Craig, which I think is a perfect example. So we had a customer, Craig, started coming in about 2 years ago, and he would buy every single Hop Butcher release. He'd buy Phase 3. He'd do all that. He would nonstop. He'd be dropping an amount of money, buying like multiple cases,
large
and he'd-
sum of money.
Yeah, he'd buy them for his friends, and they'd trade and all that stuff. And then as time went on, he'd realize like I don't want it this sweet. So now like his favorite thing is when like Hop Butcher puts out their pale ales that are like 4.75% or something like that.
Yeah, they're the best.
He just wants an easy drinking beer that has a lot of those like New England style aesthetics, but isn't super sweet. He wants those like, the tropical thing. But I've seen that with a lot of other customers where it's like they don't want to get blasted off of 4 New England style IPAs at 8% because at the start of the pandemic they were buying nonstop of those and they got burned out on them.
Sure.
A lot of them are kind of like going back to more classic stuff. But yeah, I mean, long-winded answer on archetypes, but yeah.
No, I mean that's when I worked at Westlake Liquors, which is probably like 10 years ago at this point. There was like a life cycle of a beer nerd. There was only really one archetype then, where it was like there wasn't as much proliferity of just available things, right? So if you wanted to get into beer, there was a kind of a typical path you went down. It started like you would have like a blonde ale and a pale ale and an IPA. And you get really into IPAs and you love double IPAs. Then you'd be like, what are stouts all about? And you get really into stouts, imperial stouts. Then you'd probably go to Belgian beers. Like it was like you would watch. And part of it was working in the store and being like, well, if you're at this point, I've seen this before, and you probably like your palate's probably ready for this. But part of it was just like that just seemed to happen to a lot of people. I think with the proliferation yet hegemony of IPA being so intense, a lot of people never made it out of that like first phase. There was so many things to taste and so many like options that were, I guess, was something we kind of talked on the break, but being presented as different that like aren't really that different when you compare like a couple different IPAs to IPA versus Pilsner and things like that, which is the only options you had back in the day. So you see this different evolution. I don't know if I don't really have a question. You seem like you have something to say, Steven.
Well, I'm just saying what I think I've found to be the most exciting about getting to know our customers or our archetypes or whatever is when we've been selling to a customer for, 7 years, what have you, and you know them so well that they just walk in, they just say, "What am I drinking?"
Yeah.
And you're just like, "Yeah, dude, you want this, this, and this," and it's a trust that's been formed. That that's probably my favorite part about working here is just having that trust with people that, I guess you just have, not that you figured them out, but that you know them well enough to say, like, I trust that you will enjoy this.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not, when I come in here, I'm just like, I ask you guys, what should I drink? Especially when I'm drinking stuff on tap. I'm like,
but
you tell me.
You don't find that, we used to have that relationship with a lot of people over at the old store, because it was a small store. Mm-hmm. But, with the hustle and bustle of our larger locations, sometimes, you don't get to have that experience with everybody. So, but if you do come in here, you can have that experience. Like we want to talk about beer at that level with you. So,
And I think that that's really important for like a beer store, because when it comes down to it, it's taste is such a hard sense to like explain. Mm-hmm. Of all the senses, it's so hard to compare. You can like compare, visually all of that stuff. Like, you can quantify those things a lot easier. With taste, it's so hard. So you have to actually like get in the nitty gritty and understand like why does somebody like X or Y, and kind of like really dissect it to understand somebody's palate. So if they're trusting you that much, then obviously you have enough of an understanding on how like palates can work in beer. And that's really cool that, we're able to do that here and there with customers.
Like literally sometimes I taste a beer and I'm like, I don't care for this, but I know 20 customers who will buy this.
Exactly.
That's that professional aspect of it, right? You're not just buying for yourselves, you're buying for the business and the people that come to the business.
Which is always kind of a goofy thing, because I have the beer I actually drink myself is like most of the customers that come into the store are probably like, that's the most boring shit I've ever heard. The AleSmith Nut Brown, for example, is on draft.
That's not a boring beer. That's an exciting.
Well, yeah.
People have been
I think that beer is
that
beer is incredible in my mind. And if I say that my favorite beer on draft is like a brown ale, that's kind of a weird thing. But I can also recommend a milkshake IPA for a customer who comes in.
Do you think you lose or gain credibility by saying your favorite thing on the board is this nut brown ale?
I mean, it depends how you phrase it. I'd be like, this is what I'm enjoying right now, but I think you will enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you tell them why.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like I can think about this hot butcher beer we had on a month ago. That was a sour triple IPA. I mean, what up, Jude? But that beer was ignorant. You know? But tons of people loved it, and it was an eye opener for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They're just like, this is extreme. I'm like, this is an extreme beer, and those extreme beers do still
I think
exist.
that ignorant is my favorite descriptor.
I will say about the brown ale though. I was talking to somebody in the industry yesterday, and they brought up how when they come in, they can't drink anything but that brown ale because it's so on point. It's so good. And I've seen other people come in. I've seen Avery come in a few times, and I don't think I've seen her drink anything but that nut brown.
I've seen you drink some of this.
So, well, since it's been on,
I've had a bunch of it too. Like,
okay, yeah. So it's there are people, Max, who do like that too.
I'm not saying
and,
they don't.
yeah, but I think it all depends on who you're talking to, and I mean, also, who else is putting on nut browns? Like nobody. I mean,
Right.
maybe there are. I don't go to
right.
enough bars anymore. But
well, one thing that
it's hard to find.
I've been to a lot of these
And-
places, and you guys have a much different beer bar than a lot of. I don't know what wave you guys are, but like the modern beer bar.
yeah, all right,
right.
we're wave one modern.
Right, like obviously, like
No, wave two modern.
Yeah, like,
we're wave
and-
one store,
and-
wave two bar.
Right, I don't know how
You
to
get wave
describe
three,
it,
you
but
get
like a
trombones. I'm leaving.
Yeah,
but like not like the hop leafs and the map rooms that like established
Sure.
their thing before craft beer was
Right.
ascendant, but places that like came of age during the ascendancy.
yeah.
Or post the the crest of the wave, which you guys were before, I would imagine. I think
Right,
but,
maybe at. Yeah.
they have very different lists than you guys, and I don't know. It's very interesting to think about like how much of your buying is like fan service and how much of it is the desire to introduce people to things, and how can you balance that? Because you can't just have it be the desire to introduce people to things that you're passionate about. Because
Can I ask you to elaborate on how they're different?
a lot more IPAs. Like,
We have a lot more
no,
IPAs.
No, the other way around.
Oh, like Hopleaf has a lot more IPAs.
No. How they're different. I think
Yeah.
of them as places that established their thing when craft beer wasn't a widely accepted just genre of things.
I feel like bars
It's like
like
a
the Map
niche.
Room and Hopleaf have established framework of how they would like their bars to be bought for. Like that tap list, it changes at Hopleaf, but it's
Yeah.
very locked in.
Yeah,
There's a rotating cast characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we do have that here, but not as much. Like there are things that come up pretty regularly.
Right.
But I feel like I'm striking a good balance of what I love from my favorite beer bars, what I love about beer, but also catering to people, catering to people from out of town who want to try something hypey that's from Chicago, or just people who are young and excited about overfruited sour beer. Like you have to have those options for them, but you also can turn them on to new things that like we can have an unblended lambic on, and that's still, and you can talk to someone about it who likes sour beer, and you can educate, and like you don't find that at every beer bar,
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at our list, I can see that there's always a couple beers on there that most other bars wouldn't really want to touch, but it's something that we're passionate about. And we hope that in some way, shape, or form that we'll get other people to be interested in it. And I think that we do a good job with like, the nut brown's an easy one to go with. I mean, the brown ale is a style that most people have kind of really not really thought of a huge amount and don't have for sure we cultivate it with our customers here. But I mean, what do I have in the bottle shop that's a brown ale? I have like AleSmith Nut Brown. I have like Midwest Coast Brown Ale, and I have Avery Ellie's Brown. And those are basically the only ones I can get. They're all good, but they're also not very readily available to your average consumer. And so they're not on their minds. And so it's us having to bring it in and being like, hey, remember this thing? This is the thing
that's
that we really care
reinventing the
about.
hype. You're
Yeah.
making something like with Chris and the Pale Ale, and like we can give you something that's old in its best possible form and make you understand why it's good, then that's a new thing to you. This is a new thing to you. You discovered an old record that you never knew existed.
And with where craft beer is currently, I mean, there's so much room for that. It's just a matter of if, as a buyer, you're willing to put your foot out there and be like, hey, customer, try this. You either have never had it because you got into craft beer 3 years ago, or you haven't had it in a decade. I mean, yeah.
How quickly do you go from like someone becoming like a regular customer, right? Like not someone who just like walked in the door the first time, but someone that you like kind of recognize, don't maybe know their name, they're a regular customer, to like the point where you're like, you should be trying this or you should be trying that, or like, and it might be different from customer to customer, but is there like a general amount of like, I've seen this guy.
I feel like at the bar that's an easier play, but I think at the bottle shop that's a more difficult thing to pin down. Yeah,
at the bar you're like going to be interacting with them anyways. With the bottle shop, I could have somebody who's only been coming here for a month and have them nailed in just because they actually like talk and they would like discuss the purchases and like what they had in the past and how they like it and whatnot. Or I could have a customer who comes in here and doesn't really say much, just wants to buy their beer and go. And at the end of the day, I'm like, I could guess what they want. They've been coming here for 6 months, but they haven't explained what they've enjoyed in the past they've bought.
Yep.
So it really depends, I think.
On the bottle shop side, what percentage of people are asking you guys for advice? Because I remember a pet peeve of yours, Chris, at the old store was that people would look at a shelf talker or they'd be on their beer advocate and you would be talking to them and be like, I've had all these things. Do you want to talk about it? And they'd be like, no. And so what like rough percentage of people are like actually coming in here and actively asking you to curate like a take home purchase for them? Does that, I don't know if that's probably
it's probably less on, I don't,
depends on time of day and week.
I don't really work on Fridays and Saturdays, but I can tell you that during the week, it's probably a healthy like 30% of people.
I was going to say 25.
Yeah, I think like during the week, if they're coming in on the weekday, they're more of, I feel like the weekday people are a bit more like regular, like they're coming in after work. They know after their Tuesday's up, they know that, whatever they're in here. And reliably, those are, easily. I remember when I did work more on the Fridays and Saturdays in the bottle shop, the percentage is way, way lower.
Yeah. But another concept I've talked to people about is that to be a craft beer consumer, maybe like, 6+ years ago, almost inherently you were an exploratory person. You were in it to explore and try new things and be challenged and have things that you haven't really had before. I think and it might be me imposing, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think as craft beer has grown and IPAs become so ascendant, that isn't necessarily true anymore. Do you find people coming in here that have exploration of flavor as like one of their top things, or are they more looking for experiences they've had before with slight twists? I know it's probably person to person, but I'm asking like a macro overall sense that you guys get as guys who work in very esteemed buyer positions.
I'd say if you're talking about a customer who just started getting into craft beer, your person who just gets into craft beer, like is just getting into craft beer, they're not going to be going to the most challenging beer. They're probably going to familiar flavors. So nowadays you have so many of those. You could have a pastry stout that tastes like a chocolate cake that you've had. You could have a really hazy New England style IPA, which has like all the fruit and like citrus flavors and tropical use. You could have like milkshake IPAs. You could have these overfruited sours. They're all like flavors that you have already had for your past 21 plus years. Obviously, everyone's over 21.
You card everyone, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
We do.
Chris isn't even in here anymore. It's okay.
Yeah. No. So like you've obviously had it for decades of your life. You've had these flavor profiles.
Yeah.
Whereas when I got into craft beer 10 years ago plus, like most of the flavors were kind of difficult. There's a lot of bitterness and things like that you weren't used to. So I think that the average consumer getting into craft beer nowadays has a bit more familiarity when getting into it in terms of flavor profiles. And it's just a matter of exploring on that. In terms of what percentage of people are actually like looking to explore and try new things, much less than 5 years ago.
Overall percentage or like raw number?
Just like overall percentage. I think people are, as with everything in life, it's really easy to get into a comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's why people go home and they watch, the 20th season of Law and Order and that sort of thing. Like people like comfort.
Right.
And to add a thing for enjoyment that is challenging is not always what people want.
Right.
And that's not a hit against them or anything like that. You like what you like. I mean, I'm not going to like say you must drink this or you must try this. But I think that if you were getting a craft beer 10 years ago, you were kind of almost forced to it.
Right. And so how has your approach to buying changed as we were talking about during the break and we're kind of talking about now? There is a proliferation of SKUs and breweries, but not necessarily style or flavor profile. So
I know that I'm going to probably have a lot of people disagree with me on this. And I'm speaking purely as a buyer. I'm not talking about what the brewery does and just sells out of front of house. But as a buyer, seeing what product is actually offered and what actually hits distribution, I almost feel like the
Max got chipped on the lunch bottle.
I probably went a little heavy because I was talking. I was
fine.
pouring. My apologies.
So when I first got back into beer, a decade ago, you had your stereotypical brew pubs that would have your pale ale, an IPA, a red ale. They might have a wit. They'd have like a saison. They'd have a porter. They'd have their same stereotypical 8 beers, and all breweries kind of had that. There was very little like in terms of really cool innovation all over there. You'd be like, you go into a store and you see a Theobroma from like Dogfish and be like, wow, they got cacao nibs and stuff.
I remember Dogfish on Hellhound on my ale was one that I was like, what lemons? What?
Yeah, like these things were crazy. And over the past and as time went on, tons of breweries propped up, tons of like experimentation happened. And I feel that over I'd say 5 years particularly, it's kind of become a bit more homogenized in terms of like what breweries do, just because of whether it be on tap ratings or what sells for them and all that. That it's almost like, on average, I'm going to say, most breweries kind of have a very similar feel brewery to brewery, and they're kind of offering very similar stuff.
See, it's not just me who's been saying this for the past 2 years.
I've never disagreed. I just said the raw number of things, like the law of large numbers, suggests that there are still the brown ales are out there. They just might not be making it to
there's
retail.
probably literally more brown ales. You just can't get them.
Exactly. So it's like if you
They're
actually,
rare.
you have to actually like chase after them almost, because like
Follow the trucks, people. You heard it here first. Follow the trucks for your brown ales.
Yeah. I
Keep
brought,
following because they're not going to unload any.
It's going to be one unmarked van from
Here.
the brewery down the street.
a style that
Or just
like
go to St. Louis.
last time I was on the show, I talked about Baltic porters. Maplewood's making a Baltic porter right now they're releasing this week.
Yeah.
But they're probably going to send. I have no idea how many cases they'll actually send to market, but I can't imagine they'll send more than like 50 cases to market. I mean, that's not going to be they know that they're not going to sell hand over fist of Baltic porter.
Right.
But
It's not to sorry, go ahead.
yeah, but it's like I could tell you, like back 5 years ago, you had what? Like Smutty Nose had one. You had there was what was the other? There was like one other Baltic porter that was like kind of readily available. You a lot of these styles have just gone by the wayside. So when you go to a store, you have so many more breweries, but it's so many more of, oh, that brewery has a hazy IPA. Oh, that brewery has a Pilsner.
Not to get too far off topic of what we're actually talking about, but you don't even see that exclusive to bottle shops. That is a brewery problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's also, I was going to say, like,
it's the consumer dictating what gets brewed.
from the supply side, it takes balls to not make the things are going to sell as fast as you can sell,
Or sell as easily.
Velocity is very important. If your business model is built on turning your tanks over every 2 weeks, your business model is also built on pulling through that beer in 2 weeks, right? Pulling through all the beer you made. It's not just made on packaging and selling it to the pipe filling.
So
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I meant was the amount of work that will take to achieve that velocity.
Right. And so, and when you think about it in a macro
And
sense,
if it takes no work, then that's very easy.
Right. I mean, thinking about macro sense, everyone is working together to build the idea of IPA. As you get more and more esoteric with the style of beer, it's less and less people that are working to build that mythos, that story, right? So, like, I mean, Saison's great, but it's like there's a smaller number of people that are really concentrated on trying to tell the story of Saison versus IPA, where that's just so much more top of mind for people who aren't as
I mean, to bring
deep into
it
it as
back
us.
to curating on the bar side, I think that's what I go after is those people who are trying to tell the story of different beer styles and maybe not popular beer styles. I mean, Scratch is a good example of that. I
never heard of them.
Yeah.
Have they been on this show before? Talked about them? Yeah.
I mean, Scratch is a good example of that. I think OEC. I think
Sorry, I
OEC out of
exploded.
Connecticut is a good example of that. Like that was one of the last breweries that I know of that a hardened beer nerd would come to me and like, who are they?
Yeah.
Like they didn't know who they were, and it was like it felt great. to
And
be
there
like,
was
"Hey,
something intriguing about
Let me
it.
tell you
right?
something about this new brewery.
Yeah, right.
And I think, I mean, it is part of the nature of it. It's like as time has gone on, it's like back, 10 years ago, if you were in craft beer, you were in it. Like you had to know, you knew a lot of stuff because there wasn't, I mean,
Right. No one got into it accidentally.
you
was 6 stores.
When a new brewery opened up, you'd know about it. If like, it went from 500 breweries to 501 breweries, you might know about that brewery. You might find out about it because it'd be, within range of you. But now with 7,000 billion breweries out there,
That's a very precise number. 7,000 billion.
roughly. I have breweries that like I'm told by customers or like coworkers or things like that. I'm like, I have no idea about this. Like, getting a lot of hype on the West Coast. I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
I mean, the exciting thing
keep up
about
with
that
this.
is too is like sometimes those are happy accidents
Oh,
for
yeah.
us, is because someone's like, man, I was in this weird part of Illinois and I had this great beer. You should try it. And we reach out to them. They're like, yeah, we'll bring you beer. And you're like, great. Now I can try something new and have something new to sell a customer.
Yeah.
Which
Cool.
is,
But kind of like without having, if you were in craft beer, I think 10 years ago or so like that, then you would have a much more comprehensive knowledge on styles and what was out there than what you have now, where you could get into craft beer now. You could be a buyer in craft beer now and not know. I had a rep earlier today who said they were selling to an account that was for a bar, and they didn't know what an ESB was. Mm-hmm. They'd never heard of it.
Sure.
Now, what kind of a bar was it?
I don't think that. I mean, it does matter, but at the same time, I mean, you have so many craft beer bars now. You don't need to have that knowledge.
I mean, 6 years ago, you could probably have had the same. I'm just trying to play devil's
You're
advocate.
saying,
yeah, for
you're
sure.
saying the buyer at a craft beer bar wouldn't know what an ESB was 6 years ago?
Oh, was it a craft beer bar? It was a
Is that
craft
what
beer.
you were
I mean,
saying? Or?
well, to be honest, there's as time has gone on, more and more bars are filled with craft beer. So
say
whatever-
every bar has at least 4
Quantify-
handles of
Right.
craft beer.
Sure.
yeah,
It's
whatever
like
you
this is-
quantify as
sure.
a craft beer.
This is the same argument of like, why isn't Chicago Craft Beer Week that cool anymore? Like every week is Chicago Craft
Yeah.
Beer Week. Like, what are you talking
So
about?
and not even just that,
Every
but
bar's a tap takeover.
I mean, I think that it's easy to get into craft beer as a consumer, etc., and
Which is good.
miss out on broad strokes that you wouldn't have missed out in 10 years ago. And I'm not saying that's particularly good or bad. It's just
Yeah.
like it's easier to.
Well, let's talk about is that important? Like, right? Is that inherently important, or is it just the way we were raised?
Well, let's talk about this. Like when I was getting into craft beer, every day when I would get off work, I would go to the Whole Foods on Sheffield, and they had a 4-foot section and a 4-foot cooler of craft beer, and it was 60% imports. This is before there was a Binny's on Marcy when it was a Sam's. And I'm dating myself here, but still, that was your entry point into craft beer back then.
Right.
You could easily in a year go through all the craft beer that was available in the market. Now
Right.
it's not possible. In
right.
a week, there's more than you could drink in 10 years in a week.
And not that it wasn't important, but there's so much more emphasis now placed on aesthetics and differentiation through the visual presentation of the thing being presented. Yeah, holding up a main lunch, which is just hurting my eyes. It's so busy. So it's been interesting something I've observed, like from afar, is watching people become more interested in that and the accumulation of that type of experience. I got the Pokemon than what is a Baltic port? Let me go home and read about it and contemplate and.
I think it's starting to swing back.
I
Right?
think it is too.
Yeah,
I
so do
agree.
I. Well, and for our customers at least, I can't say for the whole. I do find it very interesting over the past years. Like you talk about collecting like Pokemon, how it's the two most instrumental things I would say in the past decade for craft beer is probably like Instagram and Untapped.
Yeah.
They
They're fundamental changes, right? In the way
Yeah.
that people observe beer, think about beer,
Consume
and then
beer.
consume beer. Yeah.
I mean,
Totally.
The visual aspect of it was a complete game changer. It is responsible, maybe not for all of, but for a significant percentage of why beer looks the way it looks, right?
Yes, hazy beer. Hazy beer without Instagram, I don't think would be what it is.
I mean, but,
not even close.
And on the other end, it's that big foamy Suarez pour. That's also just like a more noble feeling Instagram thing.
Yeah.
There might be more legitimacy to it, but tasting that way. But that's driven by it looking cool more than it is that it, build the head the way it tastes.
it's the frosted glass pouring into it from a Coors Light.
Right.
There's it's all aesthetics on what looks good to a consumer, and breweries have played into that really well over the past.
And to be fair, it's always been aesthetics first. That's never not been true. No one's ever made a purchase based of a beer they've never had before based on the way that beer tastes. It's just impossible.
Well, no,
They can't.
No, but they can do it based on the style.
Sure.
I mean, when I first started buying beer, I had no way of knowing what the beer looked like in the glass beforehand.
I'm
Bottom
also
of the
talking about
shelf.
like labels and like the presentation of it and like bottle choices or cans. And
I think
that
the
type of
first
thing
people
all
that
into
really
that.
did that extremely well were Three Floyds. Like
Yeah.
those labels at the time were extremely exciting and busy and shocking.
significantly different than
Yeah.
anything else.
I've mentioned this a number of times. I don't think that Revolution would be there where they are now if they didn't have the aesthetic choice in their cans. Like that was like when Revolution came out, that was like you saw Revolution cans, like that's a Revolution can. Oh, they're in cans.
Right.
What?
Right. That was a
I
good
mean-
choice. Can we get into more of the nitty gritty of buying? Do you mind? Because I have some questions. There's some stuff that I would like to hear.
Yeah, I think you're better suited for all these questions.
So, no, not necessarily. So, I would like to know for each of you, like, what scenarios come up that are really difficult for you? Like, what are the things that are as a buyer, just some of the hardest decisions for you to make, or the things that you're most uncertain about when buying? I mean, if it was always a certainty, then you could program a computer to do it. So there has to be some feel for it. So what are some things that are just you feel like you're rolling the dice a little bit and you're making kind of educated guesses? I know you're always making educated guesses, but what are the ones where you're just a little unsure of yourself, if you could think of any? Those are I don't know. That's always, I can remember back to when I was doing buying and when I was like, I don't know. And I would always be cautious. I would underbuy was my thing. I was so afraid of being stuck with product. I would just underbuy. But yeah, I'm just curious if you can think of any. Maybe you can't. Maybe you guys are just perfect. I guess you guys are just perfect.
No, I think it's like this kind of ties back into what Mike was saying with like the proliferation of like IPA. So like IPA as a genre has become so, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but like
Monolithic.
yeah, it's just like the same. It's all samey. There's a profile that people
Homogeneous?
want, and I want to try to get that profile, but I still want it to be interesting. So I feel like with a lot of IPAs, it's like, hey, there's breweries that I trust that are going to produce an IPA that's, if I don't get to try it first, I can trust them to make something exciting. And then every once in a while, it's just it's not a good product. It's meh. And I mean, I put my name behind everything that goes on that board. Mm-hmm. So now it's up there and I'm just like, man, in the past, they were making a product that I could put my name behind, and now I'm just like buying them blind. And now I kind of like, I've lost faith.
We'll get to the bottle shop in a moment if you have anything, Max. But I would say Yeah, on the tap room, it is like it feels like you have a big, like almost like you're walking into a big public space and you got like a big pimple on your face or something. When the board's just not like jiving,
not working right.
And the other thing is like it's
But
a
when it
battleship.
is-
It's a battleship. Like it takes a while to steer, and if you have some.
It's a dominant.
Or if you like, and this is me putting words to what I think happens, and please jump in if I'm wrong, but sometimes I can almost imagine, Stephen, that there were things that you thought were going to move
Oh, yeah.
faster or were going to come in slightly different, and you got backed up on a certain style, and you don't want it to get old, so now it's dominated by a certain style
Sure,
or a
that
certain
happens.
ABV,
That
and you're like,
happens.
this is lopsided, but you can't. The only way to get through it is to drink.
You can only
Right,
move
through
forward,
it.
right?
I remember one specific example of this that affected my life in a real negative way, where there was a keg of freaking Fin du Monde on tap, that 50-liter keg you wouldn't take off to put on Terra's Bulba.
Hey, Le Fin du Monde's a good beer. It's a good beer.
So,
I mean, a good
so
example
Noah
of
and I
that-
were sitting there drinking pints of Fin du Monde, the yeasty dregs of Fin du
Good
Monde,
job,
hoping
guys.
we get.
Good job.
Wow.
We didn't get through. We just got too drunk and had to come back the next day.
And I think
That keg was a dog. It was too big of a. It was the first half of it was great, and then it just
It
died.
just died.
I can't
yeah.
speak 100% for Steven, but
But
just as
you
a-
would have put the Terrace Bulb on, is what you're about to say. No, I'm just kidding.
I would
He would
just,
have ate the keg. He would have just. It was,
yeah.
Consumed it.
We just get rid of one of the IPA lines and switch it out.
IPA, trust me.
so-
it's hazy.
Yeah. So for like the bottle shop, if I like make a mistake, it's one beer out of 1,000 SKUs. If there's a turd or something that just doesn't taste well, it's 5% of the board.
I mean, it's also like
It's-
there's a lot of things that can affect that too. It's like, wow, I tried this beer out of the can, and then when I got it in the keg,
Can be very different animals.
different animal. It's overcarbonated, and now I have to like degas it, or just something's not quite the same.
feel
about
personally
it.
attacked.
No, that actually.
He's just staring at Mike without blinking as
No,
he
you,
says
no,
that.
that problem is a past problem. But I mean, or there was
Hey, you
something
never
that
know.
I
It could
was
always come
like.
back.
Sometimes I just think like I'm excited about a beer, and I'm like, I know that this beer is wonderful, and people are gonna love it.
Yeah.
And you guys love it, and no one else loves it.
Yeah.
Like OEC Knock is a good example of that. I'm like, man, that beer's gonna slay. I've had that beer on for 6 weeks now, and it's about thankfully done, but.
Yeah, that beer's
I'll go
great.
have one.
And yeah, no, I think that with the tap list, that's always a very difficult thing because you have to worry about balance way more because things can just go off kilter because sometimes we'll kill a keg in a day. Sometimes it will take 6 weeks or so if it's just an oddball thing that just doesn't move.
And does that lead to like, as you get better and smarter about how things are going to move in that way, does it lead to like a fear of missing out on stuff because you like have to pass on
You
things?
kinda have to
because
just
you
deal
can't
with
just
that.
back up 9 cool things that
mean-
are your pet projects on.
Exactly. Like that. Like today. I mean, and every day I work, I have to tell someone no. That's part of my job. But like this rep came in with a brewery of fresh product from a brewery that that he knows I love and that people enjoy. And I'm like, man, I would love to bring that in, but I have enough IPA to last me for the next 3 weeks.
Right.
If it's still around and looking good in 3 weeks, then maybe I'll bring it in. But I have to say no this time. And it's just those-
Is there a single saddest keg you've had to say no to? Just because of this thing we're
something
talking about,
like come up that I've had to say no to.
Well, I remember
or something you shouldn't have said yes to.
I remember,
guess, the
Yeah,
other side of that.
we
definitely.
That might be an easier one to answer.
Stephen overbought sours when we first opened. I think it was just so much cool stuff.
I think we
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
were excited. I think I
Excited.
remember like us just like poring over all the books and be like, oh, we should get this, we should get
Yeah.
this.
And they just didn't move as fast. And we did some math and we're like, we have like a year's worth of sour beer.
Yeah, I mean, I did not buy sour.
And then it was like, we're not buying sour beer for
I
like
remember
a
this,
year.
this period, yeah.
Yeah. Because we have to go through this stuff.
Externally, no one knows that, right? Like, no one's
No,
like,
because it was
like-
bangers after bangers.
Yeah, it was just like, it was amazing.
It was
but-
like, oh, we have to put on Logston's Passion Brett. Oh no!
But here's the thing is like now I have that so like dialed in and not that I have it dialed in, but I mean I know like what my limitations are. Where if like I have the opportunity like that comes around like Allagash gave us the option to buy some great kegs from the back catalog. And I'm like,
What are
well,
those
I'm not
going
buying
on?
sour for the next 2 months because I know I'm going to have 6 kegs of extremely great sour coming in that no one else has.
Yeah.
Right. You probably also understand like that Passion Brett. Like when you're like, I'll pass, it'll still be there in a couple of months. Like nothing wrong with Passion Brett, but it's like you guys are probably a top account for those types of things, and people want to bring them in here. So they're probably hard selling you on those in the early days of like, I had this sour keg sitting around for. It's a great beer, but anyway, that was a little aside.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. I think everybody, we were also at a time when that was going on, where sour was supposed to be the third kind of pillar after IPA and stout. It was going to be sour. That was and it never happened.
Not
It
just
never
that,
happened.
not just that, but it was being propositioned to be like, this is where we're gonna get our wine money. This is where we're gonna get our $30 bottles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was an interesting intersection there. where
Yeah, and then
neither thing really came to bear.
And then now we have certain hype breweries just sitting on the shelf where 2 years ago people would have gotten fist fights over them, basically.
And you also realize why they were sitting on the shelf before. I mean, not that they're bad beers; they are just occasion
Right.
beers.
Right. They're not volume drinkers.
cannot-
You're
Dome
not
these
daily
things,
drinking
man.
those acidic beers.
You just can't.
And they're not how they've been sold, right?
No,
Like-
that's what I'm saying before. That's why. Like, oh, I remember when Cantillon used to sit on the shelf. That's why it sat on the shelf.
Right.
Because you didn't need to hoard it for an occasion. You could just go and get it at that occasion.
Right. It's
And-
all about who's holding the ball at any given time, right? Joking about like there'll be that passion keg will be at the distributor. We can still get that, and then it'd be like you guys hold on to it, and then like the consumer now is like I gotta hoard all those now. Like now they have so much sour beer, they're not buying them from you. Like
As a pure example, I mean, I think the saturation point for a lot of these is a lot lower than people actually think, and I'll even go so far as like Cantillon and stuff because like
Yeah.
look at Dre Fondant.
Yep.
yeah.
Look at Dre Fondant in Chicago 3 years ago. If like a case landed, you would have people coming in from like
Never hit the
Wisconsin be like, "Oh, you had Dre Fondant coming in?"
Right.
But I
And
saw
now-
that happening in other markets.
Yes.
I would go visit
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
else in the country. I'd be like, why is there's all this Dre on the shelf? And then I'd come back and be like, guys, this is coming. It's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
also one of those
so-
things where you realize rarity is a local
Sure thing.
phenomenon, right?
And I say that rarity is going away also.
Yeah.
like rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
Rapidly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's
That's the thing I've been saying. Rare beer isn't rare is another thing I've
it's like
been
diamonds,
saying for a
right?
while.
Diamonds aren't rare either, but they're valuable still for some reason.
Right.
Well, I mean, but yeah,
There's a lot. There's a lot more in that, but no need to dig into the. diamond
diamonds versus
industry.
KBBS. There's a little bit of difference in terms of.
I don't know. Some
Diamonds
can
versus
you sell
Firestone Walker. I don't know. We'll have to look into the history of those.
diamond versus used BMW. KBS will trade.
Hey,
for
it was one KBBS, 2 Assassins for what was like a '98 BMW or something like that.
Might have
I
been
think
more
that was a
recent
trade.
than that. Yeah, I don't know.
What sucker? Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I mean it's kind of going off the rails in terms of where our topic was, but
So let's get back then. What's difficult for you, Max, from a buying side? Like, when are you just like, ugh?
I think
I know you and I have had these conversations where we're like, ugh, I don't know.
I think my biggest thing in the past couple years is purely. I used to always get excited about every single new brewery that was coming in, and I'd be able to bring in a lot of their SKUs. But now I see a new brewery, and it's almost like a mix of, a new brewery, and there's like a little bit of like dread where I'm like, I'll take a gamble that this thing's not going to sell because we already have all our needs fulfilled in this category. I don't need another $80 case cost of a New England style IPA from an out-of-state brewery that was super cool 2 years ago.
Can I ask you a question, Max?
Sure.
Do you think that customers are on to that now that they realize that there's a inexpensive, good local option that's better than that imported IPA from New York that's costing them $30 a 4-pack?
Good job avoiding names.
It's an import.
But yes, I think that they are. And I think that
They're catching up
especially-
fast, I think.
I think like I said, I cannot speak for the entirety of the market, but I can speak for our customers and say absolutely 100% that a customer, I'm going to say the local producer, some local producers that are doing like cheaper ones are like, you have Hop Butcher and Hidden Hand and these breweries that are doing close to like the $15 mark for a 4-pack of hazy IPA that people are like, this is good. And then you have some other producers coming from out of state that when, the brewery gets their cut, when the transportation comes into factor, all of that, they end up on the shelf at like $20, $22, $28. And they're not twice as good to the consumer. And
They're maybe
it's
not.
definitely not the scale.
They're maybe not
even as good.
as good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely customers are catching on to that 100%. More so with IPA than anything else.
Is there a style of beer that you see that besides IPA where you see that happening in more, or is it just almost
I think it's
exclusive
across
to
the
hazies?
board. I think it's, you know what? I'd say that it is for all the styles that people got excessively hype about in the like Instagram sphere. So like your IPAs, your milkshakes, your pastry styles, all those.
It's hype styles, right?
Yeah.
But like,
Because that's what all these drops are also hype styles too.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean that's
just
all that
like
comes
a
in on
snowball of
drops.
that,
All
right?
all these drops. So, and for people out there who may not know what we're talking about, drops are there's this we've talked about on the show in the past. It's someone isn't in normal distribution here in Chicago, and what they'll do is once, twice, maybe 3 times a year at most, they'll do a quote unquote drop where they will just flood the market with a bunch of beer. And flood can be relative to the size of the brewery and then just be gone. And the idea from their perspective is to keep rarity and exclusivity there. So it's a special occasion when this quote unquote drop hits. And yeah, so that's
I
what
feel
that
like
is. A
Beechwood
little
is
bit
the
of
exception
context.
to that, but
was that?
I feel like Beechwood is the exception to
Beach,
that.
but the thing is, Beechwood isn't the thing that we're excited about. Isn't we're excited about the West Coast IPAs they're doing because of the lack of competition in Chicago for that.
True.
Whereas I'm just going to throw out the big name players for like hazy IPA that have been on for a while. Just as like, say for example, we were getting regular drops of not regular drops. We're getting 2-a-year drops of say. We'll just say Treehouse, Trillium, Other Half. What are some other big ones?
Hill Farmstead.
Hill Farmstead.
I think they might
I
be
think
over
that some of the
Bissell
stuff-
Brothers or
Yeah.
Monkish.
Monkish,
Yeah,
yeah.
Monkish is a good example.
Say we had like 4 of them. We say we had Other Half, Trillium, Treehouse, and Monkish. Each bringing in a.
Those, yeah, that would take a while.
No, but the
I'm
thing is-
curious what you're saying. Going to
Say,
go.
if
with,
they were
yeah.
each doing 6-month drops, that means that you're getting a drop you're getting 8 drops a year of big hype beer. They're going to stomp on each other over time. It's not going to be like this is so hard to get. And that's what's happened with a lot of these breweries because a lot of these ones that have a relative amount of hype, not to that level, there's so many of them happening at the same time. They might only send stuff to Chicago once every 4 months, but they're rapidly losing any sort of like momentum.
That's when you start seeing like Monkish at your bodega.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're rapidly seeing like a lot of these just kind of like, but I already have this hazy IPA from Florida. These 14 different hazy IPAs from Florida. I already have these 14 different hazy IPAs from LA, whatever.
I mean, we saw. I mean, just to name. This is just a fact. There was Other Half sitting around at Benny's like months after that drop.
Absolutely.
Months, and that was after their first or second drop.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is
tough.
there is a lane that you can. I also think they sold it at the wrong places. I think we probably could have whatever.
No, go off.
No, I think that
This is the beer buyer show, right? What do you?
I think that was Benny's being a little greedy and wanting to keep things from other people at the. It's like not quite biting off your nose to spite your face, but like I think that they were doing almost like a defensive offensive play.
I
Like they
don't-
wanted to be the main spot, and it was like, man, you're hurting the brand, you're hurting everything. If this sells through, if this dries up in the market, that's better for everybody.
I think that's
Rather than it just sitting in a dusty old stack at one place where everybody else is empty, and it's like nobody knows.
That's also
yeah.
partially on the whoever's bringing that in and facilitating.
Yeah, but there's a lot of pressure coming from somebody like Benny's.
Sure.
You know, and I'm not just gonna. I was not in any of these conversations. I heard inklings of what they were, but we're not here talking about that. And I'm not gonna try to.
I think that is what we're talking about. Let's get
Well,
the show,
I mean,
the whole
about
show
next-
canceled.
We're
locally
only
just
going to be
'cause-
like talking, we're talking down to Binny's for the next 4 hours.
Yeah, that's a good call.
my former employer. So,
To bring that back to us, I think that's something that Chris always told us was like it was better to sell out of something instead of having a stack of something that's not selling.
it's a very Sam Calagione vibe.
But also, I mean,
But-
it just keeps our rotation fresh and available. So if we sold out the other half, okay, cool.
It's not
There's gonna
even
be something
that.
else.
Exactly. We're not saying, okay, so if we only, say we're going to keep on using other half as an example. Sorry, other half. So say other half was literally the greatest IPA ever made in the entire world, which I don't think they'd even claim that. But if it was literally no competition, then yeah, we'd go crazy heavy on it. But it's like,
Say it was Rothaus.
we could touch on that a little bit later. I think it's a
right.
fun topic. But the end of the day is with where beer is currently, a lot of it's fairly, is not to be insensitive, but a lot of it's kind of replaceable in a way. Where like
Sure.
there's so much competition and so many breweries going for a lot of the same styles that if you are coming into a store, it's like, I want that new Sabro hop double IPA. Oh, you don't have it in? What else do you have? I'm like, I have this Sabro hop double IPA.
Yeah, right.
And it's got Phantasm.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, I think that, yeah, so like you lose a lot of that ability for exclusivity to sell things at a super high price and expect it to move and have customers gobble it up. I don't think that has the ability for 99.9% of situations.
Have you had conversations with any customers, or is it just kind of intuition based that they're finding like equal level replacements in local or readily available things? Is it just kind of obvious that we're assuming that, or is it? Have you talked to people who be like, I can just get this, Maplewood Son of Juice or something that I like just as much as this $28 4-pack of whatever?
I've had customers bring it. I've had a lot of customers. I would say most of it is customers bringing it up without me actually initiating the conversation with it.
Right.
Bringing what up exactly? I'm sorry.
Like finding replacements locally that are cheaper.
Yeah.
Than
Yeah.
having to actually go to these quote unquote hype locations to buy higher priced ones.
And Chicago might be a very
Yeah.
lucky
Yes,
market for
100%,
that, right?
100%.
Where both incredible world-class level producers and a market that competes on pricing. You go to New York, and I know everything's more expensive in New York, but even the local hazy IPAs in New York are like $22, $24.
Same for LA. I was talking to a friend the other week about it in the same sort of situation. And also, when I visit my family back in Ohio, and I look on the shelves there, they are covered with 12% import beer, which, if you don't know, is the like import catalog that covers everything from Stillwater, Evil Twin,
Omni,
Omnipollo,
Tilken.
Tilken, but they have like a plethora of East Coast breweries that brew out of their like contract brew out of their own facility.
They're
So
close
it's-
to where I grew up.
Yeah,
And 12% is the literal name of the business,
yeah.
nothing to do with alcohol percent.
but if I'm in Ohio and I'm looking on the shelf, almost all the New England style producers. I mean, obviously you have people like Hoof Hearted and a couple other ones that distribute. I mean, I'm talking about Northwest Ohio as like just a weird example. But like you have the vast majority of those hype hazy IPAs are not local, and those are the ones that are going to be moving through. It's just that they haven't had breweries pop up and really push that sort of thing.
I mean,
Whereas
why would you drink that when you could drink Fatheads?
I mean, true.
Exactly.
But like Chicago, we have 200 plus breweries, and there are a lot of incredible producers and ones that compete worldwide.
True.
Yeah.
I think that
GABF award winning in the category multiple times.
Illinois is the home of the hazy IPA.
yeah, so it's like
Prove
Chicago.
us wrong, USA. Prove us wrong.
It's a statistical fact.
So Chicago is definitely, I would say that both potentially an exception to the rule compared to a lot of the rest of the U.S., but also a precursor to what is to come to the rest of the U.S.
True.
Yeah,
Could be.
I'd go with that.
Are there things you guys have What's the thing you've been most delighted by seeing succeed? We've been talking a lot about things that you were like, I'm not really that, it's hard to do this. What have you been most delighted by seeing be successful or just being adopted by people? Rothaus doesn't count.
I wouldn't put that as my personal one.
All right, it was somewhat low. It was
They're great.
low-hanging fruit.
They're great.
But it was also wildly successful for you guys.
Well, how about, Steven, you start, and then I'll do mine, and we can talk about Rothaus after that. Because I think that's definitely a thing that we want to tie in.
I don't know, like, what am I most excited about?
What have you been most delighted to see something that you didn't necessarily think was going to be like successful? It has been pretty successful.
I think people's interest in cask ale. Like,
Yeah?
I see
Are casts back?
They're almost back.
We'll let you know when it's back.
Finally.
There's one venting right now, I believe.
Oh, really?
Working on it, yeah.
I didn't
It's
give you guys a
happening.
cask. Why is it overcarbonated? Just kidding.
Venting is a natural process. It's getting a cask beer ready.
Get Steve Hamburg in here. He'll tell us all about it.
I mean, I guess with cask ale, just like the demand that people have, people are excited about it, and I see cask programs falter or die
Yeah.
at many other bars in our proximity, and I'm not sure why we are so successful with it. I don't know if it's a staff thing where we're all excited about it
Yeah.
and we generate energy around it, but to me, like, a day doesn't go by where someone looks at our engine and is like, oh, you guys got the cask going? And I don't know if it's our selection, like what we've chosen to bring in or what, but it's just that's kind of magical to me.
It's something I find myself craving to go to a place that actually is pulling cask.
Same.
Like, I don't know why. I don't even really care about it that much, but I want so badly to. I haven't had a cask beer in 3 or 4 years probably at this point. And
What? Probably like 2 years. Come on, you were here like, it hasn't been that long.
It just means he wasn't buying it.
Oh, you
Yeah,
just didn't,
no,
you just didn't like our cask beer. Okay.
In the
okay.
before
See.
times when you're like, I don't know,
I mean,
I think I'm gonna have the Two Hearted instead of the Working Man Mild or whatever. So like, but maybe it's less than that. But
That's
it's still
coming
something-
back and they're
it's-
not doing cask,
But
by
it's
the
also
way.
something that like is extremely specific. It can only be done on premise. Like you can't bring that experience home. It's very very cool, and I
it's
I
seldom-
wonder why it's not more of a thing. And I think it's
seldom
just
done right, and I don't even know if we do it right half the time.
well, I think that's got to be part of it, right? There's an expertise on, that the publican has to
Not
have.
plug and play.
Yeah, and that's
you
like,
can really screw it up.
yeah. But I miss like going to own an engine and having like 4 or 5 things on cask and getting some like, man, I miss that. Like that experience was so great. And now like
I think that it's more difficult. It's more of a pain in the ass for the supply for the breweries to do it. They have to, unless you just want to like pull Bright Tank beer and throw it into a cask, which isn't really cask beer.
and you can always tell when that happens. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh.
Yeah. And, so I think it's more difficult for them to have a cask program, and then you have to put it at a bar who wants to get it, wants to move it, and it's just there's so many barriers to entry. Now, I will say, when I was in some of the more rustic parts of Scotland, the casks was great. The cask beer I had there was great. But when places didn't have their cask up and running, what they did have, which I did not see when I was in England several years ago, was an array of nitro beers pouring what would typically be considered cask style.
like on like with oxygen pushing them or like.
No, nitro on nitro lines.
A beer that
Like
you
a
would typically
Guinness
see
line.
on cask.
What
being
makes
poured
it
on nitro.
cask? Okay, got it.
So it wasn't from a cask. It was nitro beer.
All right.
But of
And
styles.
that is what that style of beer was created to mimic cask, and it does a pretty good job. What you realize is it has a little bit fuller body, but the carbonation is so low, and you can just crush nitro beer. I'm starting to think that nitro beer is made for crushing beer. I mean, that's what that's for. It's for
Oh, yeah.
Guinness and stuff like that. It's not for, no offense, Spotted Cow. It's not for that. It is for like Guinness, which is basically like the bitter of stouts. It's like just a session stout and stuff like that.
Well, it's made for things that are balanced, like at that
Yeah.
carbonation or like that level, like the acidic add of carbonation. Like there's,
But even asks for someone to like carb something for or nitrogenate something for that it's an ask of a brewery who
nitrogenation is probably harder than the cask.
Maybe, but it's like it's a big ask when they're just like, you know what, I'm sorry, you're like the only one, and maybe it'll catch on to like 4 places, and it's I just see it. I see it being a
I bet
novelty
Midwest Coast
at
would make
best.
you guys a brown ale cask. I bet like it would have to be something.
Ways
you guys,
that we have overcome that is buying our own cooperage, so we can just hand them a cask. Be like,
Yeah.
here, we have the cask for you. Just do it.
And
Right.
they may not know what the hell they're doing. It's
true.
They may have someone be like, I like brown ale. I've never done it. So I'm going to look into a book and hope it works.
There was one time Elliot, who was over at Owen and Engine, who was like a expert in cask at the time, and we made a collaboration with them when I was still at Pipeworks, and I had texted him like a day before, like, hey, like how much we were gonna put mango in one and coconut in another, because it was a mango coconut beer that we were making. We were gonna do 2 different, really mango one out, maybe coconut one out. I texted him like, how much mango should we put in this, like as like priming sugar essentially. Didn't get back to me for like a day and a half, and we had to fill the cask, and we Pipeworksed it, put a shitload in. And he got back to me. He's like 4 ounces, and I was just like, I went a very different direction. It was like 3 pounds of like.
Sounds like beer just shooting out of the cask.
I don't know. Probably. And then there was also like coconut, and it was like I also went a very different direction in the amount of coconut. But that's what you get for not responding for a day. I haven't seen that guy in a minute either. Probably as long as I've had a cask beer.
Should we? Is there anything else you want to talk about buyers? We do have the letter.
Something that delighted Max.
I mean,
and they want to talk about Rothaus as well.
yeah, I'm kind of doubling down on Steve and I got another one also. English style beers, honestly. I've noticed a bit more pull towards that in the past year or so.
Thank you, everyone who's been listening for the past year.
I mean, I've been
Not just me.
I've been bothering
I
reps
haven't
and I've been bothering reps and stuff like that for a while now about this. So it was excited when, like, say Midwest Coast, when they started their bitter, when we got like their first keg of their ESB, and then it won at GABF, like a couple months after that. And it's just nice to be able to have people actually seem to be excited about it in Chicago in some way, shape, or form, even though we don't have a brewery that specializes in that, because the original brewery that did that no longer does it anymore. I don't know what that brewery could be. They might have gotten bought out by a big brewery, and who knows.
Go for a Hex Nut Brown.
But yeah, no,
Honkers ale, maybe.
I actually have customers who ask about English style beers, and not just.
Yep.
And it's partially we've turned them on to it, and partially the import game, because Shelton Brothers going bankrupt in the past year. There's no way to get Timothy Taylors. There's no way to get your Constants. There's no way that sort of thing.
Right.
So it's like the limited amount that
There's no way to get Fullers. I mean, you don't need
Yeah.
Shelton for that. There's no
Yeah,
Fullers.
there's no
That's insane.
Yeah. Like, so you have, there's no ability for these individuals, and you are getting a little bit of that, like, hey, I haven't had an English beer in X amount of time. So there's that. So
No Wells Bombardier.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah. So
And just kind of go back to like is it important that people know about style thing? It's like English beers are probably the best example of what malt tastes like when it's not like a stout. Like stouts, like people are like, oh, there's malt in there, but that's not really what malt tastes like. That's roasted character. English beers are driven by malt, which may be the only beers in the world that are like, we are mostly malt. There's some yeast character going on. There's some English hops, but it's like we want the beer to taste like this, and that's something that gets overlooked. I think,
and
the main component of beer, and just
kind of a my little pet peeve comment that'll every single brewery that you talk to, it's like, what does the brewer drink? The brewer loves pilsners, and it's such a stereotypical example. Like, because it's low ABV and you drink it all day, and it's like, please, it's just a couple of them. Just care about like some malt character.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want like a brewer to be like, what I drink is a mild or a brown.
is my
ale
homebrew
or ESB.
mild because you can't buy it anyway.
And,
Right, they
and-
let me make it once a year.
yeah, but it's like
It doesn't
We
sell.
only sell it
And
in
then
the
we
tap
dump it out,
room.
yeah.
But it's like, there's capacity to do small batches in a lot of these breweries, and they're just choosing not to do it. not to, you know.
Right, but it
can
is
do it.
funny when we talk about the hegemony of craft beer to be like how rote it is for the brewer to be like, I drink pilsners.
I
It's
think
like, that's-
it's a cop out. I think it's an absolute cop out.
I also think it's like it's the craft beer version of virtue signaling, right?
Yes.
It's hard to be the guy who's like, I actually drink our hazy IPA all the time.
for it.
Like, you know, like that guy doesn't get the like street cred. The guy is like, actually, our crispy boy is really good. And you're like,
Yeah.
is your crispy boy that good?
I mean, that's also kind of you know when there's 1,000 different pilsners out in the market. Why? I mean, obviously, brewers are part of you're effectively working in a factory. You're you're going to drink what you actually have. Like you're not going to be like buying $15 4-pack or $15 6-packs of Rothaus every single day.
A lot of my brewer friends trade beers with their other brewer
Exactly.
friends, so they have
Yeah.
the opportunity to try
True.
other beer. And I think, I mean, I call out my brewer friends for this all the time. The lack of curiosity on their end to try other beers is a plague.
When you're
Like,
hate
they,
mail
they
on
drink
this.
their own beer. and they don't drink
I am
anything else.
both. I agree with you, but I'm also someone who really only drinks my own beer most of the time.
Right.
That's more of a financial situation.
Which is I kind of
but
wanted to.
that's
touch
also
on
not
a
true. I
little
come here, I drink a bunch of stuff.
And-
I
Yeah,
have
was
stuff that
gonna
I
say,
like.
I know for you that's not the case.
I have stuff that I like, but I genuinely come in here and I ask you guys to tell me what to drink. And typically you suggest things you think I'm going to like. But then every once in a while you're like, you got to have that stout or have this thing. And I'm like, and again, there's not that. I like pretty much everything. I just really like some things.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what I was like the base of it, like the English style beers. It's really nice to have a approachable, easy drinking, low ABV beer that focuses on something that's not just like a lager. Because you could have like an English mild. I know I'm asking too much here. You like Belgian table beers. Nobody does that. Nobody in this room even cares about that. So
Hey.
obviously, is one of the only producers that does like a 3-ish% beer sometimes. That's like a Belgian style. But like, I would love more of those examples as being things that people want to drink, because just because a Pilsner is a low ABV, easy drinking beer doesn't mean it's the only one that exists.
Right.
And I'm happy that customers are actually like, I kind of want that attribute, but with malts.
Right. It's very cool. And I hope that catches on, too, because it's much more fun as a brewer to have those
and
options.
also with bitters and stuff like that, like you don't need to have 100 of them. I don't need to have 100 bitters because
No.
guess what? There's going to be like 5 of them that are going to be bangers.
Well, there's also-
and guess what? It's the same with pilsners. By the way, I know all your guys' pilsners are great, but you're not as good as those other ones that you know are better.
Well, a lot of those things, the tricks don't work. More isn't more, right? So
Well, everyone puts their pilsner and then the same other 4 of the other 5. So it's like, like everybody's substituting theirs in for the 5th of the top 5.
Right.
And it's like, guys, there's some people, your pilsner might be great, but there's other ones that are just, they're bangers. I mean, come on, we have Pivo on right now. Is your pilsner better than Pivo? It's not better
No
than
one's
Pivo.
pilsner is better
It's not better than Pivo. It's fresh right now too, and
Yeah.
it's just it's a killer.
I gave that a 9.5 when we did the Pilsner.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
so
blind.
good. It's
and it was
that was
old
old.
Pivo.
Yeah.
And I gave every other dry hop Pilsner, I basically gave a 0, saying it wasn't a Pilsner.
right.
So-
I mean, if you can come in here and give us, and somebody might be able to do that. Be like, you have Pivo on? Yeah, pour one up and put this next to it. You'll like ours more. I'm sure there are Pilsners out there that I would like more, but like that's what you're up against. So,
Primo.
I mean, yeah, Primo, exactly.
Before we get to the mail, I want to ask Max a question. What has changed in the now with the pandemic and everything from like the distributor and the sales aspect from breweries, from distributors to directly selling to us that you wish would be more like it was before the pandemic, or wish you think that has changed, which is for the worst?
So a lot of these topics, I don't want to come across as like too massively critical, because I know a lot of it comes down to financials and everything. But you have very few distributors care about dropping like samples and having us try product before we bring it in, which was always a thing that, I mean, I know that we are not your average beer shop. We always bothered the hell out of our reps to do that before. But since the pandemic started, like that has basically dried up. And the majority of the samples we get are from some of these self-distro guys. I'm going to call out Hopewell. John from Hopewell's here every single week on Tuesday, dropping off his new releases. And that is part of the reason why you see so much Hopewell on the board and in the shop, because it's like when we try, it's like, this is good. I love this. I can push it.
It helps that Hopewell makes really good classic styles and really good beer.
Yeah.
I mean, they just
That,
make good beer.
That definitely helps. But at the same time, have a lot of these distributors that are like, oh, we have X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I'm like, I know that they make good beer, but until I try it, I'm not willing to swing for it. And so I'll bring in a case or two of it, and I might sample it and that sort of thing, but we won't know until 2 weeks into it.
How many samples a week would you say a distributor of one of the distributors brings you?
So,
I mean, if they're major distributors in Chicago,
Yeah, well, like one of the big five.
Glunz does
Steven
some.
just put his hand up in a
You'll
zero
get
signal.
Glunz.
Yeah, but you're now calling him out because he could have said zero.
Yeah,
I would
can
say,
do it.
okay,
stand
maybe Glunz.
Glunz
does.
and Heartland does occasionally. And then
I wouldn't consider Heartland. I mean, they're a great
getting
distributor,
there.
but they're not one of the
but the
major
big ones, the
players.
big boys, zero.
Right. That's not how it used to be.
Sorry, Steven, I
It
didn't
didn't
mean to
used to
call
be
you
like that either.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they were dropping off multiple samples of stuff.
I would sit with my rep with half a case of beer in front of her.
Yeah.
By the way, that's how we discovered, I don't know if this is a segue, Rodhouse was a big
Yeah.
guy just
Oh,
dropping
yeah.
off a
That
sample.
was a cold call.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was a cold call. I remember coming back from I was delivering corporate kegs downtown. I came back to a room temperature 3 ounces of Rodhouse in a bottle, with like Steven and Chris being like, "This is a good beer," and I was like, "Hey, it tastes like a good Pilsner." And then fast forward to where we are now, and we pre-ordered 6 months ahead of time their Oktoberfest and brought in
a gajillion.
a gajillion, we'll say.
7,000 million, I feel like.
I will say that is the Oktoberfest as a single drop is probably our biggest drop of a single SKU
Ever.
tenfold.
Yeah.
And that's nuts.
just crazy.
Zoom out
It's
from
so
that
crazy.
for a second. That, like the biggest drop you guys,
Makes
the,
me so
the most
happy.
esteemed craft beer retailer in Chicago has ever taken
It's
is
an
an
Oktoberfest.
Oktoberfest.
Could be a lot worse.
That
Could
no
be a
one,
lot
that
worse.
no one's ever had.
Yeah, none of us even had
Yeah,
it
that
for
was
this
a blind
pre-order.
purchase for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you pre-sold 6 months before.
Well, that was just smart buying on our part. Because we were worried. We didn't know, like, how
I'm
much
not-
do you bring in?
I'm not saying it's not, but
The
like the-
conversation we had, because the distributor importer sent us an email. They said, "Hey, we're bringing this in. We need to do a pre-order now, like within 24 hours." And we responded, "Can we get 2 days?" And in that 2 days, we put up a pre-order, and we sold an oodle, like a goddamn.
We sold a pallet.
it's
we sold a
mine.
pallet.
Yeah, right, which
We
is
sold-
insane.
and in a pallet in 6 hours for a beer 6 months out for an Oktoberfest.
Right. The way you guys had built, and I don't even know if it was intentional, but that built that beer up single-handedly. No one in Chicago had ever really had it unless they had been to New York.
You should call the distributors when they won't give us Pilsner kegs.
When we have to beg for kegs.
I'll call them.
Yeah. Like, no,
I had had it in New York. It's around New York, but like it never had even been in Chicago. And then I think it wasn't even like you guys had some strategy that was over the top or anything. I just remember a video of Chris on Instagram being like, "This beer's really good. You guys should come and have it." And then
I mean, the thing with that is it didn't
Kablam.
even catch on in
Insane.
Chicago for at least, 2 months after we were bringing it in.
Here's the thing.
It took
So
time.
We did that. So we had an initial drop of just kegs. It was like 4 kegs. And we went through those. The next drop was like a few more kegs and 10 cases. And I brought in 6 cases because I was like, I don't know how much a Pilsner is going to sell in the
a
bottle shop.
$15
$15
six-pack pills.
I brought in 6 of the 10 cases because I wasn't sure how much they'd sell.
you probably thought that was like aggressive.
And I was like, we could offload a couple cases to beer of the month if people don't buy here in the next few weeks. Because I don't want to have
That's how the sausage gets made, beer of the month, people. There you go.
well, we knew it was a good
No,
beer.
we buy it and we say, like, if we can't move it, this would be great
Yes.
to put there.
It's a great
Right.
beer, and so
get the dregs.
if people don't if people don't straight up voluntarily buy it, we're going to
kidding,
voluntold
I'm
people that this is a great beer. And they're gonna drink
Voluntold,
it.
exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So we brought that in, gone that day. I was like, interesting. So I contacted the rep, got the other 4 cases. cool. And the next drop, they brought in a pallet, and we're like, I don't know how much we're going to need. Maybe 20 cases, gone that day. And then we bought the rest of the pallet pretty much over the course of 2 other deliveries that same week.
I would be here same day it got dropped off, and it would be gone. You're like, we got 20 cases. I'm like, I was
At
How's
the
that
peak of it.
possible?
like, it's
If you
four. It's like
guys have ever been
4:30.
to the
What
bar
happened?
and you went to the middle room,
Yeah.
over the pandemic when the bar was shut down, that hallway would have two pallets worth of
Yeah.
easy just sitting in there, and it would just get plucked off.
We
of.
at our maximum, we were going through 90 cases of Pilsner. This isn't even like us trying to force on people. It is literally just like, we have Rothaus. Here it is. It's $15 a 6-pack, and
Gone.
90 cases in a week was the maximum. I
Now,
think.
but here's the crazy thing was because we were getting the numbers, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a time where like 100 cases came in and we took 95 and the rest of the city took like 5 cases.
No, it
or let's
was-
say it was 60 and 5.
It was. I think that was right when, because the first initial like 3 drops, we took every single last drop just because it was like, we're selling it. I wasn't even buying it all at one time. I was just like buying over the course of a week or so, but the distributor wasn't pushing it to any account, and no other accounts realized what volume we were doing.
Right.
They had no idea.
And then I think it
And-
started trickling out. The reps started telling these other shops like
Snitches.
Beer
Yeah.
Temple, whatever. No, I mean, I'm happy for Rothaus.
Yeah.
And it's like Beer Temple's taking X number of cases. And they'd be like, well, we'll take 2 and see. Just like we used to. Like, we'll take a couple and see how it goes.
But even then, I don't even know what it looks like nowadays in terms of like what the rest of the city gets. But I can tell you, we still probably get the majority of what comes in of Rothaus. And I can, like when we were looking at those numbers, like we're doing 90%, 95% of the market. Like it was talking like they'd bring in 2 pallets and we'd bring in, 100 cases of it.
I don't know.
120
It was
cases.
A
weird.
publican,
I mean,
a
I don't
publican of
know
an
why.
important bar in Chicago told me that he could not get kegs of Rothaus.
Yeah.
So that lets you know what the situation's like.
And and it's a Pilsner. It's a Pilsner.
Insane.
It's a Pilsner.
It's a Pilsner.
Which
I'll put it out right there. I like Trumer more. I'm just going to say it. I love Rothaus, though.
Oh, this is where our numbers go down. This
Yeah,
we're going
right.
to lose profitability for next year.
Completely unnecessary.
Oh,
but
No, I did a video.
Oh.
I did a video like months, just a few months after it
rigged
started,
that
and
Pilsner
said I'm going to try them
tasting.
both. And I was like, I still like Trumer more. But I mean, that's just me. So I wanted to put it out there. That's not like we're saying this is a singular drinking experience. Now, it is a unique Pilsner. There are not a lot of Rothaus Pilsners out
Yeah.
there.
It also
it's unique.
Gets way more points than any other Pilsner for everything that isn't blind tasting. It is the best presentation
Oh, the
of
presentation.
Pilsner by far.
Oh,
good.
yes.
So
and
good.
it's so like German,
and
too.
all of that stuff matters when you're
yeah.
actually
Oh, yeah.
buying something to take home. Like
The gold foil.
the
It's
liquid of
amazing.
Trumer, I might agree with you. I think I like Trumer better, the liquid of it, but I like the experience of buying a 6-pack of Rothaus and just like the bottle's
It's
a little bit
heavy.
heavier, and
Yeah.
thicker, and it's like, well, why?
They're a weird
why?
size.
Like, yeah,
They're like, you get the
They've
foil,
got the little-
everything.
it's just the best.
The glass has the pine cone.
It's the best.
I'm with you. I mean, the experience of opening up a Rothaus seems more special than cracking a can of Trumer. I 100% agree with
And
you.
it makes it taste better.
Well, the thing is, I kind of wonder
Yeah, it
if
probably
that's
does.
like, I kind of wonder if that's part of the reason why it was like lightning in a bottle when it came in right at the beginning of COVID, because people couldn't go to bars or anything like that, and so it offered the most like experiential experience that you could get with a Pilsner.
Yeah.
It was like, this feels kind of like special, and it's a Pilsner.
And it's great.
Yeah, it's great.
That's great. So, also, let me say, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I don't like it either. I'm not.
You heard it here
so,
first. Chris
whenever I
hates
say,
Rothaus.
whenever I like something more than something else, that means I hate it.
You hate the other thing.
Yeah, I hate the other thing.
Yeah.
I definitely get branded that way. So now
Yeah.
I hate Rothaus.
Yeah, there's no nuance to your opinion.
because it isn't my literal favorite.
You're a binary only person.
Exactly. Should we move on?
Sure.
It's been a bit. Why don't we take a little bit of a break?
Okay.
I need to like stand up, and then we'll come back and we'll read a handwritten letter on the Beer Temple podcast.
Wow.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple podcast. I am your host, co-host, Chris Quinn. I'm with my co-host Mike Shalau, and our guests Steve Freshnock and Max Peltier.
Stevie Fresh over here.
Steven.
I'm really disturbed that you called me Steve.
I don't think I've ever done it.
It took 9 years, but
Sorry, I was already in my mind reading the letter in my head. Steven.
and Maximilius
Fresh. I'm with Fresh and Max.
Fresh Max.
Fresh Max.
It's like a Homer Simpson name in a later episode when they weren't writing them.
Thank you for catching me, guys, because I wouldn't have caught that. And I don't know if I've ever in my life called you Steve. So sorry about that. Anyway.
Well, good
those
to
are
meet
the
you,
guests.
Steve.
Yeah. So we
Thanks
have
for replacing
no problem,
Steve.
Mikey.
Yeah.
we have a letter. This one is not to you. This one's just to me.
I found very rude because I've met Jack. I know Jack. I've driven beer to Jack's house. So, Jack, what's up, man?
Well, it's from Jack from Glen Ellen. And he wrote us a letter. Well, not us. He wrote me a letter. And if you guys want to write a letter, you can do that too. We have the, in the show notes, I've put the address, which is 3173 North Elston Avenue in Chicago.
Studio BT.
Studio BT. Attention, whoever you want. Mike, Chris.
Whoever
Mike
you
and
like,
Chris.
Whoever you like better.
You can address it to
Or
me
both.
also.
Max, Steven, Steve, Fresh,
Stevie Fresh.
Stevie Fresh, Max Fresh. But this one he chose to
DJ
just do to me.
Surge.
And you could also email us at insiders@craftbeertemple.com. I have not checked the email since last week, but I will. I always do. I
But
get
if
back.
you-
I do get back. Sometimes it's a while later, but I always do get back to people.
But if you write a handwritten letter, we're going to read it online.
Yeah.
Live air.
Yeah. I think I've,
Send an
with
email.
maybe a very, very, very few exceptions, if any, always read them online.
Yeah, except for those like love letters.
On
you
air.
had.
Exactly.
Those had to be turned into.
Let me
authorities.
count the ways. So this is a long one. So let's get into it. So
Handwritten too, right? Not just,
Handwritten,
like,
man.
Typed
Not
up.
even
no.
lines. This is on just like
we have gotten a typed letter one time, not printed,
On a
but
typewriter.
typed.
Found out my mom gave away
typed.
our family typewriter, which is like a family typewriter. But now I'm like, Mom, I'm never gonna be able to find another typewriter. You just,
Why do you need another typewriter? You don't need a typewriter.
look, I mean, look at me. I own a Saison brewery. I gotta have a typewriter.
I mean, that's a label concept.
Type out
right
your
there.
invoices.
Yeah,
All right.
both of the invoices.
So we
for
can
all the
Dear,
breweries, though.
dear Chris, I recently listened to episode 91. So we're at this is I think episode 221, by the way. Episode 91, and thought the discussion with Don Bischel on brand identity is extremely relevant to the market today. The topics discussed caused me to think about what makes a given brewery popular and how consumers associate themselves to the brewery and product. This one is going to take some unpacking, guys, so listen up. Local breweries, Goldfinger, Afterthought, Hop Butcher, and Art History, have captured significant attention from the West Suburban beer drinker. Though very different breweries, they all have clear brand identities, especially when it comes to style. Is there something about stylistic consistency that makes consumers want to patronize a brewery? Is it somehow, quote, easier to slot that brewery's beers into a function or role in my life when they only make clean lagers or saisons or hazy IPAs? Am I better able to say something about myself as a type of drinker by associating to these brands, or is there something else at play? Without naming names, there are ideal breweries that seem to lose the public's interest when they diversified their set. Is that the word ideal? There are.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
There are ideal breweries that seem to lose the public's interest when they diversify their set. This is especially true of those that brew popular styles outside of their established identity. For example, a wild fermentation brewery that starts making juicy IPAs. I wonder who that could be.
all of them.
True, but there's
Just
one
kidding.
that comes to mind from down south. I think this applies to new breweries as well. Those that establish a clear stylistic brand identity take off quicker than those that brew a diverse set of beer. All of this is anecdotal evidence from a non-insider just trying to make some connections. I am primarily thinking about brand identity in terms of style, but wanted to get your thoughts on other factors too. How much do you think the package format, label art, distribution, and other items play into the consumer's association to a brewery's brand? Do any of these factors play into a publican's or store owner's buying decisions? Hey, it's almost like it works out for this show, right? Okay. P.S.
Have you been holding on to this since like episode 97 or whatever?
Right, exactly.
You gotta wait for that one episode.
P.S. During the past year, I've been listening to the back catalog from the beginning and have enjoyed the
sadist.
retro futurist perspective when hearing predictions for time periods that have already passed. Many of the comments are still relevant. In 2015, you predicted this. Wow, that's crazy. In 2015, you predicted non-craft breweries co-opting. That non-craft breweries co-opting craft beer culture to sell beer adjacent products. This was in context to Not Your Father's, but was spot on for hard seltzer. Love the show and addition of the new formats. Maybe different intro/outro music for different show types, or would that dilute the brand identity? Thanks, Jack from Glen Ellen. Man, thank you for a very well written and thought out and put together letter, Jack. That's awesome. I speak for both me and Mike. He's just kidding about the thing because I read it to him earlier and he was pretty blown away. So thank you. Man, a lot in there. I thought some cool stuff. So I think the first part of it, just to recap, is do you think that by going narrow, you're helping yourself, so to speak? Like, what did he say? Art history and Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, Afterthought, Art History, Hot Butcher.
And Hot Butcher, yeah. Wow, very well. Very good.
I would say it depends on your business strategy as a brewery for long-term growth, but I think that you will find. I think you're going to find better off the jump if you actually have a set style and idea. I think that you will lack the ability to expand over a great length of time unless you absolutely like get lightning rod. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if you're looking to stay as a moderately small size brewery, I think it might be really smart to just do one style and stay that way. Like Afterthought or Goldfinger were two that of particular note. I think Hot Butcher's a weird one because just how prolific IPAs are currently.
Right.
But I think that it makes sense. And I don't think that he kind of mentioned that breweries that try to diversify might lose, like their customers might lose interest in them.
Well, we were talking today,
Yeah.
Max, about a brewery who we feared might be doing just that because we saw a beer from them that was reformulated and used to be a lot weirder, and now was just a basic example of the style, where before it was like a weird
Kind of more
version of
unique,
the style,
yeah.
you know? And we were kind of like, uh-oh, I hope, because we were not really interested in the stripped down version of it, not nearly as much as the more esoteric before.
And I think that depends. I think that if you are you start off as a unique perspective and then you get more homogenized as time goes on, I think people lose interest. But you can also have like a slight touch in it. It'll be easy to guess this brewery, but there's a brewery that used to do primarily just Belgian beers in Chicagoland. And they decided to do a house IPA. Then they started distributing the house IPA. Now the only thing we're able to get from them is basically IPA or Pilsner. And they had an amazing like Belgian single. And could they have expanded to the same level they are currently if they stayed the same path they were 5 years ago? Probably not. They would have been smaller, but I also think that it would be I'm not a investor, nor am I, a business professional, but I think that if you carve out your own niche, it's more important to have 1,000 loyal fans than 10,000 people that care lightheartedly about you.
I think it's also when you're when you're building that identity as like we are a XYZ brewery, that you don't lean entirely on style as the reason you're doing it. Like I know that, I mean, I have a brewery that only makes saison, but try to approach it in a way where it's like, we make this one thing, we use this one yeast, but it's mostly an approach. It's mostly an idea about what we believe about the way beers should taste. And there's no intention to stay that way forever. It's just what we're doing right now. And when things that exist in the is-was oeuvre outside of saison present themselves as things we should make, we're going to make those too.
Yeah, but I think you've approached other beer styles through the lens of saison, and I think a lot of these breweries that are referenced will probably end up approaching other styles through their same lens in the same way that you do. I mean, I think Hot Butcher already does that in some ways, and I can see Afterthought also taking those steps.
Yeah, 'cause I think I think Hot Butcher is a good example because 9 out of 10 of their beers, maybe that's a bit high even, are New England style IPAs. They put out lagers here and there and stuff like that. They're trying to experiment here and there. They'll do a stout. They've done a barley wine once. And are these going to move the same volume that their IPAs are? No. But I think that it offers variety, which is very important, especially once you get a physical location. If you have a brewery, I know that this is a brewery, you brought up one time that you went to a brewery and they had, I think you said 9 out of 10 of the draft lines were hazy IPA and one line was a Kolsch or something like that. If you get to that level,
You mean every...
but it's like you lose, unless you're a customer that really likes New England style IPAs, you're going to go to another brewery.
In
You're
that
gonna get tired
situation,
of
the
it.
people that I were with, they saw no problem with that.
Yeah,
They were very happy, in fact.
100%.
And so I think they were speaking to a consumer and not really.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's against it. If that's their focus and that's what it is, that's fine. I do think that you need to have. It's healthy to have a little bit of diversity to allow customers who, because here, like, if I really like, you know what, let's just say, what's a, I don't know, like, we'll go with Maplewood since it's local. Maplewood has a lot of like New England style IPAs. That's kind of like what they're probably most known for with their Juice Pants series and things like that. I think that that's kind of what they've kind of built themselves on a bit. But if I am really big in New England style IPAs and I take a friend there and that friend might not be like a huge New England style IPA person, they still have opportunities to try a couple of things. If I really like lagers and I take them to Goldfinger and they like IPAs and they're going to be kind of like, what am I going to drink here? I think that you want to diversify a little bit, but I think that if you have a core value of what you're trying to make, I think that you're going to have more long-term fans, personally.
Yeah. And I think that defining yourself by style is a shortcut to that, right? It's a shortcut. And it's a way to exist in people's minds more forward in their minds than a generalist. To be a generalist, you have to do everything really well, and you have to have really strong, approachable, yet like specifically relatable presentation of your brand. Whereas if you're a specific brewery, they can kind of pigeonhole you, which can be a strength when you
Succeed.
Yeah, like most people who consume beer don't spend as much time thinking about it as us. There's only so much mind space for it.
There are exceptions to every rule, too. I mean, so there's people who have gotten pretty successful, kind of staying as true to one as you can to a kind of a certain style guideline, I guess. And there's people who've
Who's like the best example of that?
Allagash.
Yeah, but they make a lot of other stuff.
But it's all like there's a Belgian touch to like everything that I'm sure.
Right.
Again,
And I
there's
think
even
I think
exception to
they're
that.
good.
Allagash makes other styles through the lens of Allagash.
Right. That's right. Like you don't want. They're not. They might have started as
Maybe
a
even like
Belgian-specific
AleSmith. I mean, AleSmith.
AleSmith came to mind
Yeah.
earlier.
They do
100%.
English style beer, English UK style beer. They just do.
I mean, they do like
I mean,
hazy IPAs and stuff like that, but
Speedway
it's still
stout's
like,
not like an English.
Stouts are English.
Yeah, but that's not an English style of a stout. Like to make a really strong imperial coffee barrel aged.
Here's the
stout,
thing. No,
that's
no,
an
no, no.
American
Let's
thing.
take
Go
a
back-
lens. Let's
go
go
back-
back.
But
to say
anyway,
that
I'm not
AleSmith
trying
does
to-
things- do a more classic lens.
Yeah.
Or
Sure.
and
or
is
even,
very successful with it still.
or even broadening out of like a
Right.
style guideline thing. Like let's look at Hopewell. Hopewell, I think their broad focus is easier to drink, lower-ish ABV beer.
Yeah.
Done well. And they do a bunch of styles. They do everything from pale ales to black IPAs or everything like that. But overwhelmingly, most of their stuff comes in around like 6% or below.
Yeah.
Like they're trying, like they have a certain like rule set they kind of go in.
I feel like, and I don't know what their mindset is behind their beer, but I feel like they really think about their beer through the lens of a drinker. Like this is drinking beer, and it's
Yeah.
good quality beer, but this is beer to drink quantity
Yeah.
of.
I think an underrated brewery in that front in Chicago is Beguile. Being in there and seeing them operate every day is like they just make solid, drinkable, perfectly executed beers. Which I think it's lost in the shuffle a lot on like when we talk about this type of thing where like
Yeah.
they make really beautiful beers. I think there's probably a lot of breweries out there that we don't even consider, but
yeah.
but don't necessarily capture people's minds because of what he's talking about.
So
It's
let's-
harder to be a really solid generalist brewery opening, especially now.
But you're thinking of like, I think the question was who are the biggest examples of that?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of
I was
little
just asking for
examples.
examples
Yeah.
for the-
So let's get going back to something I saw in the letter. Do you think it is easier to slot a brewery's beers into a function or role in my life when they is there a cop in this
the
like alley right now?
alleyway?
Maybe.
Okay.
Are you still
so.
parked out there? Or did you
Yeah,
like
that's right.
move it after you put your air fryer in the?
I moved it.
Okay.
Let's talk about my hair fryer.
So
Too much personal info
easier?
on the pod. Sorry.
Not on the trends with beer and cooking.
Yeah. Is it easier to slot a brewery's beers into a function or role in my life when they only make clean lagers or saisons or hazy IPAs? That is a very interesting question, I think.
That's what I was trying to get at with like people only have so much space in their mind to think about breweries, and
When they want to get a lager, a local lager,
Yeah.
are they looking at Fader? Or are they going to Dovetail, Metro, or Goldfinger?
right, exactly. And so like by being like we are the lager brewery, like it exists top of mind for people that don't have all the time in the world to sort through all the beers and curate beers for other people, or that just like want to come home and grab it.
I
or
think
back
there's a
up,
few
curate the
things
beer.
too. I mean, I also think that it's one. There's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, you can have a brewery that does multiple things. I think you can be a specialist brewery, which means you're probably going to be pretty good at that specialty aspect of it. And three, that when that person is looking for a saison, let's say, does brewery XYZ happen to have a saison out at the time? Who knows? Maybe. Does, and it's right there. So there's just the chance of it being there too. You know, like if you're not making a pills all the time, then it might not be there.
This is also specifically for much more important for distribution, right, than it is for your tap room. Like the tap room is more about people coming to respond to your brand and consuming whatever you
100%.
presented.
That's a great.
Yeah.
That's a great point to make too, because if it's like the phase 3 P3 pills or something like that, that is all irrelevant. If it's on draft as our pilsner, that's the pills. End of story. It doesn't matter if Goldfinger only makes lagers.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very important point to make, I think.
But that is, I think that's what he's talking about. It's like capturing that, like, I'm at the store. What am I going to get? And these are the things that come to my mind.
Right. Yeah, I will say, man, I have not heard a brewery capture as much of the mini zeitgeist of the craft brewing scene lately as Goldfinger. I feel like everyone is talking about this. Everyone in like the media and people like writing letters and other people they're talking about Goldfinger a lot. What do you got? I have at this point like an embarrassingly low amount of experience with their beers. Just as like a side note for me to the buyers here, what's up with Goldfinger?
I have yet to go out there. I've heard so much good things about the experience of consuming beer at the location. The cans that we've been getting lately have been fantastic. I mean, I would recommend them to people. They're just great, drinkable lager.
I've only had one. I liked it. I don't.
Right.
And I keep intending to go there. Like I'll deliver. I do a whole loop when I do suburban deliveries. But I'm like, no, do I have time to like? And I always miss the opening. Like it's just been like a ships in the night for actually going and tasting the beer. But I love the fact that they're there doing it and not taking the more trodden path of what it would be to be a brewery in the western suburbs of Chicago, which would be easier to be a generalist taproom driven, a couple hazy IPA brewery.
And I think that's
Sting,
also
I don't really like his music, but I respect that he's making it.
Making it.
Yeah, exactly.
He's so hot right now.
I do think that it is kind of interesting because when you think of your lager-centric breweries, you have Metropolitan that's been around for, 11 years now. You have Dovetail that's been around for, they have to be pushing like 5 years now, right? Something like that?
Dovetail.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 maybe.
4 maybe?
Maybe 5.
So I think that it's kind of just part of it, and this isn't to diminish them. I think they make great beer. It's just not many breweries go out there trying to be just lager breweries.
Right.
They're trying to carve out a niche that people do appreciate, especially in the past. What was it? Chicago had an increase of lager production of it was what did Doug Fluckey say? It was 25% or something like that over the course of the past year.
Josh Knoll specifically noting how good the lagers in Chicago are now. That was something we talked about last episode. It's a trend. It's happening.
I think lagers are just, people are making good lagers. For me, I will come back to what I said about pilsners and bitters and stuff like that. I mean, you're starting to split hairs, I think, a little bit.
That's what I was about to say. I mean, they're good lagers. They're good lagers. Are we making great lagers here?
Also, I think a part of it was a necessity to an extent. I was talking with somebody from Omega Yeast, and they were talking about their yeast production, where it was going and stuff, and how fermenters, there were so many open fermenters during COVID that it was they got to ferment something, and if it's going to be if they have time now, they can use them for lagers. Yeah. They can use that time to lager beer. And sure, as breweries are doing a lot more of it in Chicago, they're going to learn, and they're going to learn quickly. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of room to learn. But it's still a year of experience of a lot of breweries pushing hard in that direction versus, I don't know, why Stefano's been around for 400 years. So I think
more
they know.
900
years. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But there's also something to American craft beer being driven by you should drink local and branding and things that are I want to drink the beer that people are made by us. So the fact that there might be better, older, more world-class version of lagers might not
older
be,
or
but I'm not
be older's not important.
No, I'm not even trying to talk down to breweries in Chicago making lagers. There's some really good ones. I mean, when we did a blind tasting last year and change, 50 of them, I had a few local ones that honestly were really high up. I had two that I really don't drink as much as I should. I had Great Central, and I had what was another one that kind of came out of left field for me. Yeah, Great Central was one that was really high up for me.
Haymarket for me,
Haymarket
was big, was super high for me, and I don't know how many times I've drank it since then, and I should be.
Burnt City was another one where it was I don't really Prior to that, I didn't really think much of it, and then I have it blind next to 50 other ones, and it ranked really high for me. So there are lagers that fit people's profiles really well here, and they're done really well in Chicago. But
I just kind of like that the options exist. I go out to the burbs, and I can go to Roaring Table and have a really, good drinkable lager. I can go out to Union Pier to Seeds and have really interesting their take on lager.
I love Seeds.
Dude, I'm a fanboy of it. The fact that they're not samey.
Yes.
Metropolitan's lager versus Dovetail's lager versus Goldfinger, they have identity.
Yeah.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
That's very cool.
But is any Oktoberfest going to,
It's the mug, man.
Oh my god, it's not
It's
the
the
mug.
mug. It's
I'm
the
telling you,
mug.
this Ayinger Oktoberfest
Out
just
of the
dominates.
Iswas mug.
It
Made by Joe
dominates.
Kraft.
And this is of the Meritzen style, and of the Fest style. Which one dominates Fresh? I mean, you know what it is.
Polliner was the one this year. This
It
year,
just kills.
Yeah.
And you saw when I was drinking them blind. I
face
did
lit
3
up
of them,
like
and
it's
I
like a
didn't know
small
what it
shot.
was.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
no idea what they were, and I was just like, this whatever this is amazing.
But this is like the same conversation about like why Rothaus is so popular though, right? Because like the experience of drinking a 6-pack of Rothaus is different than just the liquid inside the bottle. So all these breweries that are making really fantastic lager and focusing on it in Chicago, they are making very, very great lager. They also have all the trappings of being a local brewery and having wonderful branding as well. And
It's fun to
and
drink
so-
a local person making
and-
awesome stuff.
And
But
I believe those things make those things
Yeah.
taste better in your experience of that
I
mug.
believe you.
100%.
I believe you. I believe you.
100%. Yeah, like you get a lot of like, you're going to go into it with ideas in your mind, and it's going to sway you.
Yeah.
If I gave you a brewery you do not like, if I gave you a brewery you do not like, and gave
Which
you a
one?
world, I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
You choose one mentally.
all of them.
Let's choose a
Gave
dead
you
brewery.
every brewery.
I gave you an arcade.
Damn,
No.
dude, dancing on graves.
No, if I gave you a brewery that you actively do not like, but it was a beer that was truly world class, phenomenal, there's no way in the world you're gonna be like, oh, this is incredible. You're gonna have a lot of preconceived notions about
Right.
it. So like,
Yeah.
I think that does help and benefit. So like a brewery that if you did 100% blind might be a 7 out of 10, might be a 10 out of 10 if you know the people that are brewing it. If you have been around with them, they've had a lot of other beer, you like them. It plays into it.
Totally.
People's
And
emotions
it
are attached
should.
to it. Yeah, it should.
This show's gone very late, so it's. I think I should call it.
We took a break at 2 hours of material. We were
Right.
like,
yeah. That's way longer than normal. Sorry, guys, but that's the other
Don't
thing
be
that
it was
that
great
surge
content.
helps.
You're welcome, guys.
Right. Yeah. That's what I meant to say. You're welcome. Guy who stopped half hour ago.
Jack. No, Jack's listening.
Jack's listening.
Thanks, Jack.
I want to thank all you guys. I want to thank my guests, Steven and Max. And I want to thank you, Mike, for coming up with the idea for the show. I hope it was everything you hoped it would be.
It was everything and more. You guys are wonderful. I love both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Awesome. So we will be back next week. Do we remember what the topic is for next week?
No idea.
So here's something else we should talk about, if anyone's still out there. You want to do something with a book club, right?
Yeah.
We've never talked about this on air.
air,
So can
we
we
should.
spend just a few minutes
Yeah.
just floating the idea? We're going to set a date. We won't set a date quite yet.
Yeah, we want to set a date that's at least a few weeks in the future so you guys can get familiar with whatever book we're going to read and then talk to the author of. So the idea is to have like a beer temple book club where we're like, hey, in a month and a half, we're going to talk to someone like Randy Mosher wrote this book.
That's who we're trying. We want the first one to be
Mosh
tasting
Dog.
beer with Mosh Dog.
Yeah.
Volume 2.
Yeah.
Volume 2.
But so the idea is that you guys would, it's books you've probably read or books that you want to read, and then you would read them and send questions in too. We'll have questions for Randy. We'll talk about the book and foundational books too.
So how are we going to get a
Okay,
stand-in for, Michael Jackson?
Right.
Like, that's
We'll have to
Rest in
skip.
peace.
We'll have to skip that one. We'll
Yeah.
have to skip.
We'll just
yeah.
play episodes of the
Great
Beer
Belgian
Hunters.
beers.
yeah.
But so the first one, I think we're pretty certain
Yeah.
that we're gonna go for Randy Mosher's tasting beer.
Dust your copies off. We'll give you the date we're actually going to do it.
And if you need to
release
buy a
it,
copy,
send your questions in.
I think we have a couple copies here we have a couple signed copies, believe it or not, in the basement. So I could throw them up on a link online if you guys want to buy a copy
Yeah,
of
if you
this
need a
book.
copy.
There is a more recent edition out, but you get an OG version. That's fine.
Yeah.
And
Mine is water damaged. I got it for free when I was working at West Lakeview because she didn't want to sell them to people.
great book. I still think, for my money, I think the best concise book on beer.
It really is the best,
Yeah.
most foundational book on enjoying beer.
Yeah, I ask people, I mean, there are ones that are more technical. There's John Palmer's brewing book, which is
How to brew.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. But
doesn't
I mean,
have quite the life that this
it
book
doesn't.
does.
And like, if people ask, like, what do you need to be a Cicerone? Everything you need to be a Cicerone is in that book. If you know everything in that book, you could easily be a Cicerone, if not an advanced Cicerone. So, which I don't know what it takes to be an advanced Cicerone. I have no idea.
You got the Chris Quinn guarantee. Read tasting
I
beer,
guarantee you.
and then take the advanced Cicerone
And know
blind.
everything in it, and then
Yeah.
take it blind.
Yeah.
And then if you fail,
You can
send
your
me
bill
the
to-
invoice.
what's the address
and
again?
I'll say, wow, that's how much it costs these days.
write us a handwritten letter.
And I'll say, geez. Yeah. But so keep an eye out for that. We'll be talking about it more.
Yeah, I think that like I'll vouch for that book. Even also, I mean, I got that when I first got into beer, and I read that book front to back multiple times. It's a great book.
Great
Wonderful
book. Tasting Beer, Randy Mosher. Pick it up, and if you already read it, let's start sending in the comments and the questions at insiders@craftbeertemple.com. Now I really am going to go. I was going to say what we're going to talk about next week, but we both have forgotten what that is. I forget. But we're doing another draft soon as well.
Oh, yeah.
But let's just get out of here. See you guys next week. So long.
Bye.
Bye. No. Nothing is ruined. Nothing is fucked. Nothing is fucked.
Flawless.
This is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again, 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 again.